single. Here we go now. The Packers take over Seattle, ladies and gentlemen. The Packer fans taking over. We don't hear those Seattle fans. We don't hear them at all. Not a squat during that game. We heard "Go Pack Go" the entire time, ladies and gentlemen. We heard that, and let's get to the intro, ladies and gentlemen.
This is Tom Grossi, and you're watching the PackReacts podcast.
Let's go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to PackReacts. I'm your host, Jeremy Hadler, along with our other host, Mike Arvonio. And today we discuss this Packers game, but most importantly, folks, we have a special guest coming on, and that is Jeff. Jeff, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Jeff, for coming on. Thank you for coming on. And I just want to introduce Jeff because Jeff and I met at the Packers San Francisco 49ers game at the Cheesehead TV meetup. So this is the second time I brought a guest on, Jeremy, right? Like,
yes.
You sourced the guest, but this is the second time. Obviously, John being first, but Jeff being the second guest that I've sourced. So, thanks for joining, Jeff. I definitely want to hear about what you thought about the trip. I think I've kind of said my side, Jeremy, the last episode I was on, which was a few weeks ago. But we definitely want to hear how your trip went, kind of everything you thought. And then also, of course, as we've kind of mentioned in past episodes, our show is kind of focused on the fans and their experience, how they became Packers fans. So we'll kind of kick it off to you now. First off, I guess start talking about and tell the viewers kind of how you became a Packers fan, kind of your origin story to what brings you here today. But also then, towards the end, we'd love to hear about your trip and how it went and how the best part of the trip was definitely not meeting me.
Hey, I don't know about that because that led to this podcasting experience I'm having right now, right? So, but no, thank you guys for having me on. Awesome experience so far, even though it's only 2 minutes in. But yeah, in terms of me becoming a fan, so the way it's honestly hard to remember exactly because it's not like my father or something or like family was a Packers fan for like decades or anything. My dad was, I would say, loosely a Bears fan, ironically. But me and him, not to dive too deep into this by any means, but like me and him didn't have the greatest relationship. And also my brother was a Cowboys fan. Ooh. So growing up, right, they were both kind of, my dad wasn't super into football. My brother was very into it. So he was like heavily rooting for Troy Aikman and talking junk, and like trying to get me into football because he was about 5 years older than me. So he would, very heavily root for the Cowboys. And then my dad, loosely being a Bears fan and not following it as much, I think I just decided what team could I pick to, frustrate the both of them pretty equally and hopefully, make them despise my team for decades to come. And so I think that was part of my mindset. I was only 12 years old at the time, basically, I was 11, I guess. So it was 2003. So the first game I can remember watching was actually the 2003 game where Brett Favre kind of lit up the Raiders. I think it was like very shortly after his father passed away. And that was, that whole story everybody knows, obviously. So that was like the game that kind of really caught my attention. And I think got me to be a huge fan of Brett Favre, honestly, which obviously I know like now controversial figure. And I think I could separate like the athlete from the, person off the field a bit. And like the person I watched growing up and enjoyed, obviously. So yeah, I think his energy for the game and all that, I think really drew me into it. But it was also just, I knew it was going to make my brother and my dad mad if I was a huge Packers fan and rooted for them. So, that was the first game I can remember watching. So I'd say the 2004 season was the first season I remember coming into and watching. And it was ironically Monday Night Football on my birthday, 2004. So I turned 12, and they played the Jake Delhomme led Panthers, right? So that was the first season I like came in as a Packers fan and watched as many games as I could because, at the time, obviously there wasn't all the streaming platforms now where you can, or, illegally or legally stream it, right? It was kind of just like, you got to watch what you have on your TV at the time. So it's, it's interesting thinking back to that time too, just like only being able to watch, I don't know, maybe like most of the nationally televised ones, right? Like only being able to see like 5 or 6 games because obviously, growing up in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area, like in Pennsylvania, it was all Eagles or Steelers games usually on. So it's just wild to think back to a time where I could really only watch like 5 or 6 games. Then I had to like literally go watch like NFL Network or ESPN to see the highlights of the game and who won and whatnot. But yeah, since that season, watched every game I could basically. Once the streaming platform, once I could pay, buy a Sunday ticket and things like that and do the streaming, like watched every single game for the past, at least 8 to 10 seasons, I would say. The first game I ever went to was in 2006. It was against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo because my uncle and cousin are huge Bills fans. So we kind of went up, and the running back at the time was Amon Green, which I remember right before halftime, he had a fumble. I think me and my uncle were like, we're hungry. We're going to try to beat the crowd. We're going to go out and grab some food. Like, doesn't seem like anything crazy is going to happen. And then I believe that we heard Amon Green fumble the ball, and then the Bills went on to like score before halftime. So that was not a great experience for the first game I was at. But yeah, so since then I've been to like 9 or 10 games. I've been to Lambeau 3 times. The first time was in 2018 against the Bills. Again, fun just because it was
we both went to. We figured that out.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's yeah, right. Just there was a lot of random connections that as I was kind of just over the course of me and Mike getting to know each other a bit over, when we went to the 49ers game, which I'll obviously circle back to, but there's a lot of random connections, that being one where it was like, that was your first game at Lambeau also, right?
That's right. Yep. That's right.
Right. So that we coincidentally went to this game in the 2018 season, it was, right?
Yep. I believe so, 2018, 2019.
And it was funny because I think the score was like, 22-0 or something like that, right? Like roughly.
And Rodgers was unhappy with the team.
Yeah, and I remember like when I was obviously I was just like enamored with being at Lambeau and just like very thrilled about the trip in general. But I remember my cousin obviously being not very happy that his team put up 0 points, and it's also crazy thinking back to Josh Allen, like how bad he looked in that game, right? Like we saw Josh Allen in his rookie year look like very questionably playing, and then now to be a superstar is kind of crazy to think about that too. But yeah, my cousin was miserable, and I was also like. I mean, they shut a team out, which is great, but you also have like Rodgers kind of like, giving McCarthy like, not great vibes and things like that. And it kind of felt like the start, because that was the season he ended up getting fired too, right? Like later that year against the Cardinals. So it almost felt like the beginning of the end. Is like my first Lambeau for McCarthy. So that it was just like a weird first game, I would say. But the overall experience was incredible, obviously, just like being in that atmosphere. So that was the first game I was at. The second game I was at was the freaking 49ers game in the playoffs, the 2021 season. And so it was me and my now wife went out there together, and like she was a great sport about it. It was obviously freezing. We bundled up in our snowboarding gear, and it was just like, it was honestly like the entire weekend, because I think we went out on Friday and we were kind of in Milwaukee for a couple of days and like got to experience, some great aspects of Milwaukee, which is, just a really fun city in general. But then, yeah, like everything was great except for like literally the outcome of that game, which were like, slowly just felt like we were, bleeding the victory away. And it was just, oh my God. It was because, the snow was falling. It was so beautiful. And like start the game so hot, and then Mercedes fumbles it, all goes down from hill. Everybody knows the pain, but it was just, to witness the dichotomy of it being like a picturesque game at Lambeau Field in the playoffs, and then just have it like just watch that slow death happen was obviously not a great second visit to Lambeau. But then the third, for the 49ers game, a little, I guess it was about a month ago at this point, but that was, by far my best visit for a game, I should say, because, the game itself, obviously they were in control the entire time. There was no sweat whatsoever. It was just, watching those games at home, we are not sweating at all is incredible, like for one thing, right? But to be there and to just have like no concern, because funny enough, I think I've been to 10 games and like the win-loss record is 4-6, I want to say, or no, I think it's like 3-7, I want to say, something like that. Actually, I have a little spreadsheet open, but so yeah, my luck going to games is not good at all. So having that outcome of that game, especially against the 49ers, which, have been our nemesis essentially for the last decade plus with the Kaepernick iteration, and then obviously with Shanahan, and it was amazing to kind of like slay that proverbial dragon per se, as everybody has mentioned. So to see that outcome in person, plus connection with being in the Philly area, like a lot of my college friends are diehard Eagles fans, and they also hate the Niners. So like to be there and have like most of my coworkers and college friends like really like piling on with me, being like, screw the Niners. Like, it's amazing to see this outcome. Like, it was a very, very special game itself, but the weekend as a whole was a lot of fun also to get to meet Mike, which I know you made that joke at the beginning, but it was obviously, in my opinion, one of the highlights to build a connection that I'll continue to embrace beyond our first weekend together. So I think I guess I got tied those two topics together in terms of my background and the 49ers game. But let me just see if there's any. I bought a share in 2011 and 2021. So it's not my college
really?
who like to rag. What's that?
I said, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to have both. I mean, the first time I was in college, and I had to have a difficult decision with my mother about, paying for college, but also wanting to buy that share and having to allocate funds towards that. But hey, everything worked out, and that was my first share that I got. But no, the 2021 one, I was obviously, much more established adult, and it wasn't a big of a deal. I just had to explain to my friends why I was buying a second share. But no, it's funny because some of my friends who like to rag on me, especially one of my college roommates who was from Seattle. So during this most recent game, like, we were kind of like chirping at each other, but then it was funny because it almost just like mutually went quiet in the second half, which I know we'll talk about the game in a bit, but it was like, we were kind of chirping at each other, like leading up to it. And then during the first half, and then it got to a point where I was just like, I feel bad talking shit. And then he wasn't saying anything. Sorry, I don't know if profanity is allowed on this podcast.
All good. All good. Don't say too much. Jeremy will get mad. He got mad one day.
So we mutually went quiet the second half, but his personality is just very funny guy, where he gives me a lot of crap about having shares in the Packers, where he's constantly asking me like, like what's the stock price, any dividends, things like that. Like he's making me feel like a fool for having it, but I'm just like, hey, you don't understand the passion.
Yeah. No,
half your fan base isn't even showing up to fill your damn stadium for the biggest game of your year, and letting Go Pack Go chants take over. So, I'll do whatever I want for my team,
which is crazy. It's crazy to be in the Seattle stadium and you heard that. But we'll get to the game later, Brett. That was great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we will talk about the game. And of course, like as I forgot to mention, our topics, we'll be, of course, discussing the Seattle game. We'll be previewing the Saints game. We'll be talking about the Aaron Rodgers documentary because some of us seen it, not Mike, because he was lazy to see it. Then we're going to discuss our rooting guide for the Packers this week and the playoff scenarios, which is not much of the scenarios, but we'll be talking about that. I did have a question for you, Jeff. Hold on. Let me display
real quick.
Here. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So this is the picture from what do you call it? The Cheesehead TV meetup, which was a great event.
I thought he was about to ask me a picture about this photo, and I was like, "Oh God, what did I do in this photo?"
No, nothing bad. But yeah, I just want to talk about the event real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody watching. The event was great. When I walked in, I think Jeff did the same thing. I didn't really know anybody at the event. I just came by myself. So I think we kind of immediately hit it off as you were getting a drink, right? And you were talking to Tyler Herrick, actually. Yep, I was like, oh, wait, there's Tyler. I didn't realize he was going to be at this event. So yeah, we just kind of started talking there. But yeah, no, it was such a great event. We met so many people. As you can see in this picture, a PackReacts alum, Big B, was there. Then Corey here as well. So just a bunch of great experiences from that trip, and we even played football towards the end. We could talk about that in a little bit, but it was in a great spot right in Lambeau, totally free event, and to be in Lambeau like that, it was a great time. So yeah, I'm really glad we met Jeff, and hopefully Jeremy comes to the event next year. And he was in town, he just didn't come up to Green Bay that day, unfortunately.
No, I did not come to Green Bay that day.
It was really cool to see just a lot of people we listen to on podcasts, follow on social, and just to like meet them. It was almost one of those feelings where it's like you see them like on the podcast and stuff so much, but then like first time seeing them in person, it's kind of like, oh, like I know that person, but it's also like who they are, but you're just a stranger to them, obviously. So it's kind of like making the rounds and saying hi to everybody. But that was awesome. Especially just being in Lambeau the night before a game and having like the box access to like go out on the balcony and just soak in every moment. Lambeau Field was really, really cool. But yeah, the Titletown, the 2-hand touch game was awesome, except a couple of injuries that piled up at the end for various people that participated. But especially for a 32-year-old like myself, where I pulled my hamstring on one of the last like points we had. But hey, some of the younger guys got hurt too, so I didn't feel that bad.
Yeah, I made it out on skates, and I was happy with myself on that one. Yeah, it was fun. That was a great time. And I came up with an idea earlier that we got to make that an annual thing. The Cheesehead TV meetup is an annual thing. Let's make that football game an annual thing and try to make it more what do you call it? Structured next time and planned. Yeah. That's great. It's such a unique situation to have a football field that people could play at. That's totally open to the public, literally on the doorstep of an iconic football NFL stadium. That Titletown thing is just so great, but everything about Titletown is great, but that football field is really unique. And it's, something I've always been to Green Bay. I've been to Green Bay now 5 times, but I've walked on the field. I've never actually used it the way it's meant to be to play football, because I just didn't have, people I knew with me to play with. I've gone with people before, but they weren't going to play. So that was really cool to get the experience to, play a 2-hand touch pickup game. And what was great was other people kind of came in too. There's one girl that was there from her birthday from North Dakota. She was having a good time. There was like some other younger kids. So
big Tucker Kraft fan.
Yeah, the Tucker Kraft fan. Yeah. So if you're watching the show, happy birthday. I forget her name, but happy birthday again. And there were some other kids. Remember that? Some younger kids that were having a good time. So yeah, it was fun to like expand it. We almost got a 5-on-5 at one point. So I think we had like 10 or 12 people playing.
Yeah. It was awesome. I was just gonna say, it's funny because I don't know about you, but it's like going into that event, like the happy hour, I was like, oh, maybe, which there were like groups of people who went to like Stadium View and stuff after to like grab, and that's what we intended to do, right? Like me and Mike intended to go get dinner, but then a couple of people were like, oh, we're gonna go play at Titletown Field. So it was like I feel like we both just like didn't even think about it. We were just like instinctively like, yeah, maybe we wanted to go to like an after party sort of thing, or go to dinner, or go get drinks or whatever. But we were both just like going to play football at Titletown, like right outside Lambeau Field. Like it's like a no brainer. It's like, that's like a magnet. Like, of course I want to go do that and just like, relive childhood a little bit. But yeah, awesome time. Very, very, awesome environment in general.
Definitely. I did. My one question for you, Jeff, was, since you're in the area like me of the outside Philly, and you had to deal with Eagle fans so far, how have you dealt with the Eagle fans as a Packers fan?
So, if we're talking like people that I know, like my friends and whatnot, I will say luckily most of them are pretty rational, and like, they might feel themselves a bit after a big game, like after the Steelers games, things like, like things like that, they might start talking a little bit of trash. But I don't know. It's funny because as much as like they can get full of themselves, it's also so fickle, where it's like, you have these stories like the whole like AJ Brown drama from last week with like saying that the passing game needs to. So it's like they're like an 11-0 team on a 10-game win streak. And like, while you have a lot of them that are being like, ridiculous and like super happy about, like just arrogant about the win and whatever, there's also a lot of drama. And it's like they like constantly tear themselves down too and like nitpick everything. So it's like, it's a combination of where I kind of just like let it all play out and like let them go through these cycles where like they're like, irrationally confident one week and then the sky is falling the next week, and kind of just like let those cycles play out. But most of my friends that I'm close with, they're pretty level-headed, where like they'll, after a given week, they're like, all right, well, passing game wasn't great today, or like run game, like what, they might have like 1 or 2 things that they take away and they're like a little discouraged by, but they never feed into the, oh, like Jalen Hurts isn't a good leader, or like the locker room's a mess right now, or something like, like they don't buy into any of that stuff. Like that's all just like the Philly sports media. But it is very entertaining though to like witness all of that, right? Because and also, how we establish like we're outside of football, Philly sports fans for, Phillies, Sixers, obviously, like we can relate to that to an extent for like those teams, right? Where it's like the
Yes.
Sixers, for instance, like I feel some of that like pain and like sometimes those crazy narratives. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, like screw this guy. Right? Like it's like I feed into it a little bit more, but from football standpoint, because I'm a Packers fan, I could just kind of like separate it and just like watch it and be like, wow, you guys are like, I kind of love it though, because like the energy is like good, right? Like when the fans are happy and they have a good game, it's like you like feel everybody, like it like comes alive, like the energy is good, right? But it's like whenever they have a bad game and there's just like some random like drama story going on, it's like it just feels like the air is like sucked out of the balloon and everybody's just like moping around. So it's, I don't know, you can just like kind of feel it a lot, which is interesting, is what I would say.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. All
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
But either way, I was gonna say yes, we would beat them in Philly if that's what your question is.
I mean,
if we play them in the NFC Championship game,
if we play in the NFC Championship game, would you go?
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, answer that question.
So I have gone back and forth where I'm like, literally, if it ends up being in Philly for the divisional round or the NFC Championship game, I don't think I would go because, one, obviously it's going to be super expensive. Two, if they lose, it's going to feel so shitty. Not that I would, like obviously I think they would win and they should win, but I'm just saying if they happen to lose, that would feel so shitty.
Yeah.
And if they win, everybody's going to be
so
I'm not feeding into like that. I'm not saying like Philadelphia fans are the worst or anything like that, but it's like you're in enemy territory. Like going to any away playoff game would probably not be a great experience if they win, because it's like you're pumped, but everybody around you, like you kind of have like a target on your way back on the way out. So it's like for those three things combined, I think I would be like, I think I'd rather just be home, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I still have my question, but can I just so I've talked to Jeremy about this quite a bit, him being from Philly, right? And I'm always like, I can handle it. I totally get what you're saying when you like definitely have a target on your way back out, good or bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's good, then you win, then everyone's mad. You can have people drunk and they like kind of use you as a punching bag or like something to take their sorrows out on. And if it's good for them and bad for you, then they kind of make fun of you, and then like it just goes the other way. So either way, it's probably not a great situation to be leaving. But isn't that also part of kind of what allows Philly fans to have this mentality to like almost scare people away from coming to the stadium? Because when you go as an away fan, part of your job is kind of like what we saw in Seattle, right? Where you're there to support your team and kind of show them that even though they are in enemy territory, the fans came out and were there to support them and make noise, and then it kind of gives them the step up and advantage that their fans are there. But I'm not saying I necessarily would go to the Philly for a playoff game either. I'm not making that commitment right now, although it's definitely on the table. But to say, and I know Jeremy's had this excuse too for why he won't go to a game in Philly, is because of the fans. Kind of makes it like okay for them to act this way. It's almost like negotiating with terrorists, right? It's like because they terrorize fans, we're not going to go. Like, I'm not saying to fight anybody, but you know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that should be the reason not to go.
No, I think it's a very valid argument. I think there's probably like one other aspect that I didn't mention is like, so I 100% agree with you. I think it's a very valid point. And honestly, you kind of just got me like amped up to be like, maybe I will go. Screw it. But no, like the other aspect of that is like, so there's like the general Philly fans that I'm describing, but then more likely than not, if I go, I'm probably going to end up going with, a handful of college friends or something, right? That are diehard Eagles fans. So that in that situation, as silly as this might sound, I'm just kind of like an empath where it's like, if the Packers lose, they're never like, that's going to be miserable, like I described. But if the Packers win, I'm then going to feel like a little bit bad, like gloated. Like, I don't want to be that guy that's just like, hopping around, like talking shit after like their season just ended. So it's like, it's kind of that like emotional layer. No, I get it. I guess it's like, I would probably go with friends. If I was to go by myself, so here's the thing, like if it was at like the Commanders or something and say they had that reputation, like I wouldn't give a shit. I would definitely go. But because I would most likely go with friends, it's like the combination of the two. I would just be like, I wouldn't be able to, like if I was at my house and they won, especially handedly, I would just like be like yelling and like I want to be able to like embrace the victory. But if I'm there with my friends, I don't want to be like that jerk that's like, rubbing it in their face is kind of what I'm getting at,
No, I get it. And Jeremy and I were supposed to go to the NFC Championship game back when we lost to San Francisco in the playoffs. RIP.
2019, is that what you're saying?
No, 2021. If they beat the 49ers.
Oh,
if
they beat
it
them.
was
Sorry,
2021. So the game you went to, we were supposed to go to the next game. So unfortunately, your bad luck going to Green Bay was the reason why we didn't see an NFC Championship game. I'm just kidding. But
hey, I'm trying to get myself back to 500. Right.
But there you go. We got to win.
6 straight wins.
We got to win. Although I would have preferred you to lose this game against the 49ers, then we would have won the other game against the 49ers. But okay, you can't have everything, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, so that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably super special to watch them win, especially like we've always said on the podcast, like what's the best game you could think of going, like the Super Bowl, the NFC Championship game to Lambeau? And my answer is always I'd rather go to the NFC Championship game in Lambeau, because if you're going to the Super Bowl with all the fans and everything, that's just such more of an exciting atmosphere than going to the Super Bowl, where even if you win, half the fans couldn't even care about the game, let alone the teams. And the other half of the fans, like 40% of the fans probably don't care, maybe care about football, but don't care about the teams on the field. So maybe like 5% of the stadium care about your team, right? So maybe it's different with the Packers. Obviously, Packers fans travel well, but the Super Bowl is just such a, corporate event that I feel like to spend $5,000 for that situation. And, either way with the Super Bowl, you're going home. If you think about it, right? It's either you're going home with a victory or in a title, or you're going home as a loser. With the Super Bowl, not only do you get to celebrate going to the Super Bowl with the fans, and it's a lot cheaper, but you also have something to look forward to, is that they get to play in 2 weeks. So I just think that the NFC Championship game at home is like the game I would go to no matter what. And the next time the Packers play an NFC Championship game at home, I will be there. I don't know if I'd be in the next Super Bowl. I'll be honest. Although Jeremy is going to the Super Bowl this year.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh damn! I completely agree with all that. Yeah, like the Super Bowl is just it would feel very commercialized. It's also like that, literally that. Like I know the whole playoffs is like win or go home. It's all like elimination, but it's hard to explain. It's like that's literally like that's like the final line. It's like if your team loses, it's like equally as devastating as if they win, right? So it's kind of like it's just like a high emotional stakes investment to like spend that much, not be, like the reasons you said, not be ingrained like mostly with the fans of your team. It's the prices are insane, right? Like to go is like,
oh yeah,
I think at least like $3,000 usually. So definitely would prefer an NFC Championship game at home for sure. Mike, did you say you will be at the next? So like if this year, if they ended up in the, it's possible. It's certainly possible. I guess it wouldn't be, right? I guess it would be like a 7 seed. Would have to.
Yeah,
they would have to be the 5.
Yeah. It's very unlikely we get an NFC Championship game.
That's true.
Although,
sorry, maybe I was thinking more just a home playoff game is more likely. But
I mean, I think it's possible, right? If we're the 5th seed, then the 6th or 7th in theory.
Yeah.
But it's probably unlikely because we actually are not eliminated from the division at the moment. It would require the Saints. It would require us to beat the Saints this week and win out. But it would also require the Lions and Vikings to lose out, but tie the last game.
Yeah,
they have to tie the game they play each other. If one of them wins that game, then there's no way. So we didn't get the division. So it's very, very unlikely that we have an NFC Championship game at home this year.
I know, which makes that like latest Lions game like I don't know. I never like to, because like overall they're having a great season, right? Like if we zoom out and it's like what would we have expected? 2 years into Jordan Love's tenure, like everything's going great, right? And I get really frustrated. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but like I get really frustrated with the fans. Like I thought it's not necessarily Packers fans. I think it's just like a culmination of social media and people's like short attention spans and stuff. But it's just like the week to week, like the skies, like no matter what, it's like even if your team wins, people find things to knit. It's just like you got to take a step back and be like, why am I watching sports? I'm trying to enjoy myself, right? Like I'm trying to like have it be a positive experience. I'm not trying to go, like the people that go to sports and then just constantly bitch about it. It's like, what? Like if you're doing that, you're most likely just like unhappy with everything in your life at that point, right? Because it should absolutely be an outlet of like enjoyment and positivity, right? So if that's your like foundational spot, then it's just the week to week, like just some of the comments you see about like LaFleur doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't do this way. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Like he is a fantastic, like I'm just using that as an example, but it's just like these off the wall comments that are like bitching about things left and right. It's like literally either bots or like mentally unstable people at this point is kind of what I have like boiled it down to. Right. So it's like, I forget why I even brought that up. What was the original reason I brought that up?
I mean, I was gonna agree with you of like like I've had the experience with the Eagle fans. Like my Eagle friends literally complain every 5 minutes. I'm like, stop, and I'm like, I can't watch the game like you were mentioning. Like I can't watch. I have to like watch like from passion. Like obviously, I'm not gonna be like a Cowboys fan. Like think we're gonna win the Super Bowl every year. Like I will be like a little bit like I'll be optimistic, but I'll be a little realization. But I'm not gonna be like nitpicking every 5 seconds of the game. Like I couldn't do that to myself. Like because we're Sixers fans, I would get annoyed with them, but I'm not going to be like every 5 minutes to be like annoying because then what was the point? I'd be a grouch the whole time watching the sports team.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And I remember why I brought that up in the sense of like, because you were talking about the number 1 seed and stuff. And I was just saying like, given the state of Detroit with all the injuries right now and the fact that I absolutely think we can and probably will beat the Vikings in a couple of weeks, it's like if they had managed to win that Detroit game, like it would be a much more like exciting picture right now.
Right.
But I caught myself as I started going down that path because it's like they're 10-4. Jordan Love looks amazing. Like there's so much to be happy about and positive about. I'm not going to sit here and be like, damn, I really wish they had beat the Lions and they're on the like in position to get the number 1 seed right now. It's like I'm not gonna fuss about what could have been and just be like, I'm very happy with this team right now. And like it's just a very fun time to be a Packers fan, honestly. And I wish that most people would realize that and not just find things to gripe about.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And this is, I've said this multiple times on the show. This season, I think the Packers will look really good. I think the Packers have played very good. And if basically, we've beat every team that we've played except, and this is my only like asterisk to this season. Not to be negative, but the teams that we need to beat in order to have a good playoff picture, We've lost every single one of them, right? Like think about the 4 losses that we have, right?
Yeah, we could.
The Lions twice, the Vikings once, and then the Eagles the other time. So literally every team in front of us, other than like the divisional teams that are not as good as us, but are going to win the division, we lost every single game to them. So like that's what leaves a bad taste in my mouth about the season. Is this is such a good team? We literally beat every team that we should have beat. But the games that we needed to win to set ourselves up to be a number 1 or number 2 seed, they blew every one of them. So like that's like the killer part of it because then that's just more of a selfish thing. Like, can we go on the road and win and make the Super Bowl? I think absolutely. I think this is a very good team. And I think like you said, the Lions are getting hurt. The Packers are ascending. I think that knock on wood right now, we don't really have a lot of injuries. So I think that everything is in front of this team. Absolutely. But what's not in front of this team is the selfishness aspect of I'd love some home playoff games so I could go. We're not going to get any of those this year. There's no home playoff games coming.
All right, so I'm glad that you tied it back to like obviously you were kind of like joking around a bit there and like you selfishly wanted home playoff games because I was like when you said like bad taste in your mouth about this season, I was like, come on, you can't be like actually.
No, not about the team's play. Not about the team's play. It's like we're really good, but we're not going to get the ability to experience
because more so because of like the amount of other teams. Like it's an unprecedented situation where there's 4 teams that are like realistically on pace to go like 13-4 or better, right? Like the Packers could very feasibly go 13-4, and if you started the seagoing and said, "Hey, the Packers are going to go 13-4," you'd be like, "Yeah, that should be the number 1 seed," right? But there's literally 3 other teams that are like are going to finish with that or a better record probably. So it's just like a very weird, rare situation. But I was going to just two points real quick because I thought you were going to the path I thought you were going down, which you ultimately didn't, which I'm good. I'm happy with, obviously, is that I thought you were going to say like you just want them to have like home playoff games because it's unrealistic for them to like win 3 on the road or whatever. But then what I was going to say was, okay, yeah, because I was going to say is like everybody used to say that back in like 2019, right? When like the Packers were like in San Francisco and they're like, oh, just wait till they get, the playoff path like through Lambeau, right? And then it was like 2020 and 2021 obviously led to great disappointment, and that wasn't like a shoe-in, like, oh, when it's at Lambeau, like we'll have a cakewalk sort of thing. 2020 season, I think you can kind of cast aside because that was obviously just like a crazy year, like minimal fans, like that was just that year just is like in its own little bubble, like cast aside, like can't really be analyzed in comparison to others, I feel like in ways.
And that was the year we were first seed, unfortunately.
No, and 2021 though, dude. Like the end with the 49ers game, like the blocked punt for a touchdown has to be one of the biggest proverbial like kick in the gonads, like way to lose a play. Like for it to be so close, then it's literally because like I've seen the replay where it's like a slow reaction sort of thing too, where like the punt gets blocked and everybody's like, wait, did that really just happen? And like the 49ers players were even just like, wait, what? Like we just have to pick up this ball and go. It was almost like everybody was like, no way, this is happening right now. And then like to have that be the way they basically lost the game, and like, Rodgers chucking it up to Adams in double coverage, like, brutal. But one more thing I'll add to that. Like, I think what added some extra weight to that too, in terms of that playoff loss, like, was that it almost felt like it was the end of an era too, right? Because at the time there was like immediate narratives that were swirling, like, there's no way Rodgers is back, there's no way Devontae's back. Like ultimately, like there was just a lot of like, this is now the time where they need to pull the plug and like get the cap in a healthy state and like rebuild the roster, get younger, like rebuild, etc. And like, so it was just like to have that outcome and then like go back to, like our Airbnb and just like, catching up on like trying to find like nuggets of positivity of like, what can I look forward to next year? Like, okay, like, hey, they came up short again the second year in a row at Lambeau, but what's a silver lining I could look for next year? And it was all just bleak. Everybody's like, no, like this was the last chance. They pushed all their, chips in the middle of the table with the cap. They fed into Rodgers' nonsense. Like, this is the end of the line. Like the Packers are in for 5 years of misery sort of thing is like what all the freaking narratives were like across like all platforms. It felt like, so it just added a lot to it where it just felt really rough, like the end of that year, ultimately less, or I guess more than 3 years later, but like a short amount of time later, we're in a fantastic position where everything feels amazing again. But it's like, felt very, very bleak that night for sure. Mm-hmm. One final point I'll make too about feeling good about this year is like, I literally saw somebody post a clip. I think it was, I don't know if you guys like Wes, I think, or I forget his name is. No, not Wes Hawkins. I think it's like a Brazilian guy that covers the Packers, but he posted a clip last year of the Saints game. I don't know if you guys remember this play off the top of your head, but like the Saints last year. Yeah. During the season?
He was there, yeah.
Oh, nice. I'm sure you told me that, but I forgot. Because I know you were at the Patriots preseason game that you mentioned.
Yeah, right? I went to both. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I went to both.
So somebody posted a clip of the play where, like, it reminded me how much of a clown show, frankly, like the first half of last season was, where it was like they could not get like 3 consistent plays in a row that looked functional on offense, right? Like they were like having a penalty or just a weird drop or fumble like every other play, literally. And in that Saints game, there was a play where they tried to do like a trick play where it was like a, toss to the running back and then a lateral back to, or no, a toss. Sorry, I think it was a lateral to Wicks, and then he threw it across the field to Love, and Love had to like bend down, barely caught it, and then he went to go throw it, and did the split, and it was So he did a split, and it was wildly overthrown to the receiver he was trying to throw to. So like every aspect of that play was just a disaster. And somebody posted that play and was like, wow, like looking at this reminds me how far they've come. And I was like, it was a realization thing where I was like, yeah, like last year was a fucking mess. Like for them to even be, like I said, in a normal year where they could be in contention for the number 1 seed with a 10-4 record, it's like, that's astonishing compared to how much of a mess they looked like for like the first half of last year. So I just want to make that point. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right.
Let me ask my question real quick. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Never got my question. All right. So when you were talking about how you became a Packers fan, and it's just interesting because we have other people on the show, and it's like one of two things, right? One is like you had mentioned, your parent, your father, or somebody in your family, or a really close friend was a Packers fan or is a Packers fan. And you kind of inherited it. But it seems like in your situation, it's kind of the opposite, where you almost did it out of inherited spite, if that makes sense, right? Like you kind of did the opposite of what your family member liked. And that's similar to, I don't know if you saw in our intro, but Tom Grassi is in our intro from the 30 for 30 I got. But he was a very similar situation where his father was a Cowboys fan, and he became a Packers fan the other way. So just curious, because obviously, to start something out of spite is not necessarily super genuine about the team itself, right? You're almost like looking for an alternative to something that the person are you looking for an alternative? So like what you landed on was the Packers. So what I'm curious about is obviously, you've grown with this team so much over the years. Now you're a diehard fan. It has nothing to do with spite anymore. It has to do with your love for the team and then everything. I'm just curious, like what clicked for you that you realized over the years that your love for the Packers were not just because somebody else liked another team, but because you personally connected with this team. Like, what was that realization moment that really connected you to the Packers?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think I don't know if I could tie it back to like something specific, honestly. I would say it was more like the thing that really got me into football a lot and like watching it consistently and like compelled me to pick a team was to like spite them per se. But like once after like that 2004 season, I was saying was like the first season I watched as much as I could have, as many Packers games as I could. After that, it sort of just like my mind just sort of naturally, like I just kind of like shifted to like, I'm a Packers fan now. Like I wasn't really like, like circling the, if there was a Packers like Cowboys game or Packers Bears game, obviously there's two every. So it wasn't really, because like I said, my dad wasn't really, he was more of a Bears fan growing up, but he had like Bears stuff around the house, but he never really watched the games. Like he barely knew like the team at the time. So he wasn't like super into it, but my brother was. So it's kind of, I think it was just that like galvanizing thing that got me into it. But then once I established like, hey, I'm a Packers fan, like I just stayed consistent with it and just really enjoyed the team. But the more I got to know as I got older about like the history of the team, and like they asked, because even like when I first became a Packers fan, I didn't understand the concept of like how much of a small town it is. Like they would say that on the broadcast, right? They'd be like, but I'm like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Like I don't even know what the population of the city I live in is off the top of my head, right? So it's like I wasn't thinking about how like wonderful that is and like how special that is. So it's just like purely the football team I just like got into. But as I got older, that was kind of like a cool, like separate journey to gain a fonder appreciation for, the special nature of like the team's history and the small market aspect of it and like the community feeling of being there and all those things. Right. So it was like, and I would say like one final thing about it is like, it was one of the few things, like, especially as like, young in life where I'm like 12, 13, 14, 15, it was one of the few things that I felt was like something that it was like mine or like I was very devoted to, that wasn't just like something that I was doing that somebody else was doing. Cause like, when you're young, you're kind of like looking up to like a cousin or a brother, your dad, whoever, like to be like, I want to do what they're doing. I want to enjoy the things they're enjoying. But it was like one of the first things I can remember that I was like, I really like this thing, and nobody around me, like family wise, none of my friends, cause they're all Steelers or Eagles fans, like nobody else loves this thing, but like, this is my special thing that like I love and I'm going to obsess over and become very passionate about, So it's like that kind of just like grew and like multiplied, every year basically since then is how I describe it.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. I think that's, such a common theme in Packers fandom where people don't realize when they pick the team, you think about football, you're thinking about the colors or just some superficial part of the team. But when you really understand the background and how unique Green Bay is, how unique having a football team in a city like that and how historic it is, I think people just really kind of grow an appreciation for the Packers and just the story behind it. I think it's a very unique story in sports, and I don't see how anyone could hate the Packers. I know, like, we have rivals, of course, but this is just such a great story in sports. It's just so unique that sometimes you almost stumble in it. I think I stumbled upon it. My dad was a Packers fan, grew up when in New York when the Packers lost to the Giants a bunch, the NFC Championship game, and that kind of really fueled my fandom. But just kind of stumbled into the history and kind of the community around the Packers. And I feel like most people do that. So I think just we're super lucky to be Packers fans. And it's just really interesting to hear those stories. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And if I'm remembering correctly, did you say that your dad became a Packers fan because your uncle was a Cowboys fan?
That's right. Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. So right. So like, isn't that
one of them?
Like between
one of them is so he has two brothers. One of them is a Packers fan, one of the Cowboys fan. So I guess he had to pick, and he picked the Packers. What he says is because he had better like the colors better than the Cowboys. So not necessarily out of spite, more out of you got to pick one, right? So he picked the Packers. But yeah. So it's a split household, but the what do you call it? The majority are Packers fans in my dad's family.
Yeah, it's just funny those three, like me, Tom Grassi, and your dad essentially were like influenced against the Cowboys to be Packers fans in some way.
Very true.
Definitely. I mean, for me, it was just because my dad probably was an Eagles fan for like 2-3 weeks, I would say, as a kid, because in my elementary school, if the Eagles won, you get no homework on the day after. So that was the only reason why. However, it was the year the Packers won the Super Bowl, and it was like the game after the Eagles get beaten by the Packers, and I was like a little annoyed. And then I watched the Packers against the Falcons, and they blow them out. I was like, all right, I'm joining my dad. I'm a Packers fan. So I joined them the Super Bowl years when I joined them, and then I'll never forget the Eagles for helping the Packers out with that Deshaun Jackson Meadow Miracle. I thank him for that. Yeah. I thank him for that.
Yeah, no, on that, it's funny that that's the year that you became a Packers fan, because that was my freshman year at college, and it was like really cool to have that be the year that they go on to win the Super Bowl. Like a new chapter of life, like starting going to college, and then have that be the year. But no, I vividly remember being in a mall because it was around like Christmas time, presumably, right? So I was like with my mom, we were doing some Christmas shopping, and I remember knowing the scenarios of like if the Eagles win that game. And I literally remember like seeing a TV in a random shop in the mall and kind of like pausing and being like, Mom, I need to see what happens. And then Deshaun Jackson returns that, and I'm like yelling, and she's just like, what the heck is happening? Like, why are you so pumped? But yeah, no, that playoff run was incredible. Them beating the Falcons was completely unexpected and amazing. I think the Eagles was like, like they were similar seeds, but the Falcons, because they were the number 1 seed, and they had whooped our, rear in the season, right? Yep. So it was just like, anyways, yeah, awesome run. So hopefully we have a similar situation this year. There's been a lot of parallels drawn of like, could end up playing the Eagles, could end up playing a division rival. So, who knows? Maybe those stars will align.
Every 14 years, the Packers make it to the Super Bowl if you count it.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
That has been the facts. Even if you count from like Bart Starr's days, and you make
really?
You do like the plus 14, like obviously they make it in the 80s and the 90s. That's why my dad was a huge fan of them. But then if you count like the next 14 years, it ends into the 96 one with the Brett Favre one there. So then you get that, and then
I saw another towel. You got like an assortment of towels on your laptop?
I got this one was when my dad went to the Super Bowl with the Brett Favre one.
Gotcha.
So he went to that one. This one was when my dad went to the Giants NFC Championship game in that snow cold Brett Favre last game.
That was painful.
Do you have ours?
It is upstairs.
Yeah, mine's in the other room.
Like the
from the
salute to service one. Yeah, I have it on my shelf over there.
Mine's in the other room. So. All right. Well, so that I think was really helpful for us and for the viewers to hear kind of your story, how you became a Packers fan. And as I said before, like that's kind of our thing is whenever we have guests on, like to hear everyone's stories and kind of give people opportunity to talk about kind of their origin story. And I think that's great. So I think now if we're ready, I think we can probably kick into the football side of it, probably the more fun part for you instead of just talking about yourself. Let's kick into kind of our.
I thought you meant for the viewer because I was gonna say yeah.
No. I think
I was also gonna ask, is this the longest? Where we have 50 minutes of just talking about my back? Is this the longest intro?
No, we've gone
longer.
Believe me. If you talk to people at work, they think this is nothing. They're happy that I'm this short. But okay, so let's go into our segments. Jeremy, want to kick it off?
So first one, we're going to go over this past week, which was the Packers taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Lumen Field, even though it used to be called CenturyLink Field, and I'll still call it that to this day. Packers go in and beat the heck out of the Seahawks, 30-13. Jordan Love, Toyotathon miracle once again, doesn't throw any picks, has 2 touchdowns, has over 229 passing yards. Josh Jacobs, he had a very good first half, and that's what started the momentum for the Packers to start off right at the gate to score 14 points in this game. You get the turnovers here. You got Valentine's first interception. You got Cooper get an interception to pretty much send the dagger there. Geno Smith gets hurt in the game. He throws the interceptions, and then Sam Howell comes in and throws the interception to Edgerrin Cooper. Overall, I was very happy, and this was complimentary football, although the only nitpick I will go with, because this still annoys me a little bit, is the Matt LaFleur challenge. That is the only thing I will say, Jeff, that has annoyed me so far this season, of like, can this man just not throw the challenge flag? Please. That's all I care at this point.
Yeah, I think it's like might be like Aaron Nagler or somebody refers to them as emotional challenges.
Yeah.
I just think it's fair. It's fair. I mean, if they, let's say their record wasn't very good and they were like, on the outside looking into the playoffs, it's like maybe that's a bigger thing to grip. But like, I feel like we could have fun with it where it's like, not that serious. I mean, based on what I'm saying is like, I know that he has a very poor challenge percentage in general. So it's not like a great thing. And it would be potentially a bigger issue if they weren't doing well. But given all, that it's not, and they're obviously they have a great record. It's like, I mean, LaFleur is very expressive, right? Like he's always like whenever it pans to him on the sidelines, he's always like looking like super happy or super mad or whatever. So it's just funny thinking about them being emotional challenges. Yeah, because he probably at the second after he throws it, he's probably like, "What was I doing? I should have just held my breath for a second and not thrown that." But yeah, whatever. I'll take it in this grand scheme of things.
That's my only issue. Mike, we'll start with you, and then we'll start with Jeff with the thoughts of the game.
So maybe let me speak about the bigger picture. I think this team, and I said I was very happy with them. I don't know how much you've heard of the show, Jeff. Probably not a ton, but I'm probably the more negative person, right?
Yeah, definitely the most.
I can gather that from the 48 hours I was with it. No, I'm just kidding.
My dad, on the other hand, is super negative. But no, I think I'm fair, but I try to like understand the reality of the situation we're in. So, like in the beginning of the season, right, Love was hurt, and you could see he was playing hurt. And I think a lot of the interception problems he had, which is why I think that this team was kind of on a rocky start, although they were winning after Malik Willis kind of gave the reins back over to Love. You can see that this offense wasn't hitting off both cylinders. Since the blocked kick in Chicago, because I was at that Chicago game, and believe me, that was probably one of the Packers' worst games this year. They should have lost that game, and they kind of got lucky based off of a fingertip. But since that block kick, starting in the game that we went to and against the 49ers, the Packers have looked like a completely different team. And I think the reason why is pretty obvious. I think we've given the ball to Josh Jacobs, and we've given the ball to Josh Jacobs. This team has ran through, and this offense has ran through Jacobs first and foremost. And that's just been amazing. One, amazing for my fantasy team, but two, amazing for this team because this is something that the Packers, we've said, are needed for a long time. We were hoping that A.J. Dillon was going to be this type of guy where he was, just a reliable, grounded pound, give the hand off the ball 20, 30 times a game. And that's what Josh Jacobs became. I think he's got 6 or 7 touchdowns in the past 5 games, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the exact number, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But his touchdown number is great. I think he touched the ball like 30, 35 times this game, which is probably a little bit too much. But still, I'm not going to complain with that. Going from like Aaron Jones, who they hardly gave the ball to. I don't think they're afraid of Josh Jacobs getting hurt. I think that they know that he's got the body to withstand the hits. So that's what's really getting me excited because as you guys were mentioning before, a team like the Lions, looking like the best team in the NFC, is banged up, and they're banged up bad, and they're only getting worse from here on out because of the injuries. A team like the Packers, I think, have a chance to progress quite a bit because of Josh Jacobs, because the weather is going to turn. It's going to be harder to bring a guy like that down. And that's really something that's been something I want to hang my hat on. But second off, like since Jordan Love has gotten healthier as the season's gone on, and you see that pretty obviously, he hasn't had an interception problem. And that really has, I think, changed the tide of this offense. So definitely excited. Definitely excited for them to get the ball to more people. Towards the beginning of the season, Jaden Reed was a huge fantasy guy. Jaden Reed is still the same guy he was in the beginning of the season, but there's just so many guys that have stepped up on the receiver slate of the Packers. Remember we were talking a few weeks ago when John was on, Jeremy, that if Christian Watson showed up, what that could do to this offense. Mm-hmm. Well, not only has Christian Watson showed up the past few weeks, Romeo Doubs has showed up. Tucker Kraft has, of course, continued his success. You have Josh Jacobs. Jaden Reed has actually been the forgotten guy almost, which is kind of crazy.
Luke Musgrave too.
And Luke Musgrave may be coming back pretty soon. So that's why I know you said you thought I was going to go down the path of if this team goes on the road, they can't do anything. I honestly think the Packers are the team to beat in the NFC. I really think they are. Because I think that the Lions are regressing quite a bit with the injuries they have. I mean, don't forget, Aiden Hutchinson is not coming back. Even though somebody said that he may come back for like the NFC Championship game or something.
It's the Super Bowl, but
yeah. The Super Bowl.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no way that like I know people like to be like, oh, he can go back for like NFC Championship or Super Bowl, but even if he was, like, if that's his first game back, there's no way in hell he's gonna be effective, right? Or like actually like 50% of what he was. So
right.
He's done.
That's right. And if it's a Super Bowl, it's really done for us because it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, great point.
That's the same for Montgomery. Also, they're talking about too because they're not putting Montgomery on IR, and everyone's saying that he might be back for the playoffs. I'm like, he tore his MCL. We know as Sixers fans what that is like. It's so long. He won't be back,
especially when it gets colder. But so like, I think everything's in front of this team. I think they got to keep winning. We're kind of going to a weird spot here because we've essentially clinched the playoff spot. Not yet. A win this week clinches it. But then we still have
Vikings and Bears.
There's still 2 games, right? So more than likely we're going to lock ourselves into a playoff spot. Now maybe there's some seeding considerations. I'm sure there's still going to be seeding considerations, but very unlikely to get the division round. So we're kind of in this kind of weird spot where what do? Do you sit people? I mean, I don't think they're going to sit people, but I just hope that they don't lose the momentum that we have right now because we built a lot of momentum, and this team has everything in front of it. I think the other thing, I was listening to Pack-A-Day this week. Losing Preston Smith has actually been probably the best thing for this team. For this team because it's given some of the younger guys room to kind of grow and mold into their position on the what do you call it, outside linebacker position or defense end, I guess now in the 4th grade. So I'm actually very positive. I think Josh Jacobs has been exactly what this team needed and more. And
a healthy one too.
Huh?
A healthy one like Aaron Jones, you have to rely on too much and you get hurt so much. Like that's been the issue for the Packers the past couple of years. Like obviously it's gone off Jair, but Bakhtiari last year, that guy couldn't stay healthy. And Mike, you talk about it. We should have never gave him the contract. Aaron Jones, after we saw him in the Chicago game last year in the week 1, gets the game-winning touchdown, but like holds up his hamstring. Like you got to have a healthy running back into this playoff atmosphere and head into the playoffs. That is a big thing. And Josh Jacobs, as you mentioned, Mike, he could go all out for that.
Josh Jacobs, I think, is easily the best thing that Gutekunst has done in his time as GM, other than obviously Jordan Love.
Oh, that too.
I was going to say drafting Jordan Love. Yeah.
Other than Jordan Love, I mean, you got to give him Jordan Love, but Josh Jacobs has been a huge sign. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was gonna on that front of Gutekunst. I was gonna say, like drafting Zach Tom, maybe right tackle. Like he's been he's slowly building a very good resume when he got a lot of crap, and it's just, I'm sure we'll bring up the Rodgers doc, but just the amount of we had a very short amount of time of like Packers uncertainty, which I'm fully aware of, like during that transition. Last year was a rough year, and then this year is obviously going pretty well for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of turmoil where there's a lot of narratives about, moving on from Rodgers, and Gutekunst doesn't know how to draft and all that. And it's just like everything's playing out. It's just very nice to take a step back and be like, everything's playing out exactly how we would have hoped it would. And like, you just got to let time run its course, basically. But just some of the things that you brought up, I guess I'll provide some thoughts on, Mike. So I've had a similar thought in terms of the rest of the season where it's like, I don't want them to take their foot off the gas pedal and kind of, coast or whatever we want to say, right? But a couple of things make me feel better about that in the sense of, they can clinch the outcomes that they need Sunday to then not have to win on Monday are unlikely, right? So it's like most likely going to be a win-in situation on Monday. 2 days before Christmas, Lambeau Field, there's snow in the forecast. The Saints don't want to be there. Like, not trying to get ahead of myself, but that has all the makings of just like a magical game where they just take care of business to get in the playoffs, right? So that's this week. Next week, there's no way in hell that they don't, get fired up to play the Vikings, right? Like, just regardless, the fact that they beat them earlier this year, the fact any game they play against them, they're going to play their best game for that game and try to beat them, because there might still be something at stake there where they could potentially jump them for the 5 seed. Who knows? So that's the next 2 weeks. And then the last week of the season, even if they're locked into their seed and they do rest some starters, it's the Bears. It's at Lambeau. They're not going to, like, even if they have Malik Willis in there, right, who we've seen win games against the Colts and the Titans, like, I could absolutely see a situation where like the Packers, put Malik Willis in, have Emmanuel Wilson at running back, a little bit more Malik Heath at receiver, rest some of it, and like they still whoop up on the Bears. So it's like, I've had a similar thought where it's like, I don't want them to take their foot off the gas pedal, but at the same time, I think the 3 specific opponents they have ahead of them and the situations they have, like, I think there'll be something a little bit to fight for or play for in each game, I guess. So it's like, I think it'll be a good finish to the year. Also, LaFleur, like, he was asked about this, and he literally, like, in terms of, similar question, similar notion, like, are they going to take their foot off the gas pedal, et cetera? And he straight up said, like, I'm not even thinking about the playoffs. I'm thinking about us continuing to get better week to week, which I understand is coach speak. Like, obviously he's going to say that, but it's just, I feel like LaFleur is a more like cerebral coach where he's not just going to like give you like a bullshit line. I know he's a little bit like mysterious about injuries and things like that, but like generally when he says something like that, like, I'm not thinking about playoffs, like, we're trying to get better week to week. Like, I believe him. And like, I feel like they're not sitting there being like, hey, we already got our ticket punched. Like, we're just going to mail it in the next 3 weeks. Like, they got their eyes on the bigger prize. All right. So that is what I feel, at least. So I feel very, very good heading into this playoffs. I think honestly, the only team that, like, I'm not at all, like, obviously anything can happen any given week. Like, they could lose to the damn Commanders in the first round for all we know with some random bad refereeing, or just like anything can happen. Right. But like pure talent wise, the only team that I actually feel like at this point, given all the Lions injuries, can, potentially beat them significantly or just like might be better than them on paper are the Eagles at this point, in my opinion. Like, I know the Vikings have been playing very well. I know they have some elite talent at certain positions, but I don't know. They don't intimidate. And like, I'm sure the Packers could lose against them in the playoffs. It would suck, but it's just like, if that were to happen, I'd be like, all right, tip your cap to the Vikings. Like, they pulled some voodoo magic shit this year, and like, whatever. Like, I wouldn't be that heartbroken. But if they play in Philly and they just get, like, Saquon has, 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns, and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith each have 100, and it's just like a murder, like, that would be devastating. And like, I don't foresee that happening, but that's the only scenario where I feel like there could be like devastation ahead is what I'm saying. Like, everybody else, I'm like, they should either beat or it should be a close game. Like, we should not have any like pain ahead of us, I guess, if that's, how I want to phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Josh Jacobs, incredible. Completely agree with that. I think specifically, which I know a lot of people have made this point, like goal line situations where, forget what game, it might have been before the Niners game, because that was the first time he had like 3 touchdowns, right? It was during the Niners game, I believe. Yeah. And I think in post game, or that week or whatever, he basically said like there was conversations that he let LaFleur know. He was like, hey, like, you could trust me in the, when we're goal situation, only 2 yards to go or whatever, like, we don't have to drop back and throw it 2 to 3 times. Like, just hand it to me 1 or 2 times, and like, we'll probably get it. Like, said something along those lines where he had a conversation with LaFleur and was like, just trust me and like, give me the rock in those situations. And ever since then, like, yeah, he's been absolutely flourishing. And like, they've been starting games off hot with him, which has been great to get the lead. But then, yeah, in goal line situations, I feel like their red zone offense has drastically improved because they haven't been overthinking those short yardage situations, which is great. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, feeling awesome going to the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, The only thing I critique of like Josh Jacobs and LaFleur is like the shotgun run, like when you're going like that, they just hand it off, go straight into like the end zone. That has not worked on the fourth down, like critical situations, because they get like stuffed or the 2-point conversions every single time. I think they've gone for 2-point conversion. They do that exact same play and they get stuffed every time. I would like to see a little play action, like where if you saw in the Chiefs game last year, where they fake it to Aaron Jones for a handoff and you get Sims out to the wide right and Love's gotten wide open. That is like something of play action I wouldn't mind for like a 2-point conversion or like a fourth down situation. Because the other times I look at them like, why don't they just sneak the ball in when you're like that very close? A first, like, especially knowing from Eagle fans, like the tush push, like just do the love shove. Like that could be just the simplest thing we can get. Get the love shove going here. That's
Did you create that on this episode right now?
I haven't heard that before.
I have heard that a little bit, but yes, the love shove needs to be a thing. I endorse it right now.
Yeah, sign me up as long as he doesn't get hurt. But yeah, because I think like not a slight against Jordan, but I think Jalen's a little thicker in the glutes and the thighs, you know. So I just don't want Jordan to get hurt in those situations. But
that is true. I mean, I would just like it to be not all the time of like the shotgun run up with Josh Jacobs. Something like
I agree.
Change it a little bit. I wouldn't trust like if you do like how Rodgers did it back in the day with like Devontae Adams, you do that one-on-one situation of like you just throw it to the side quick and he runs up a yard. I don't trust that because that one I feel like that could worry the Packers a little bit if like someone jump offside like Micah Hyde did against Dak Prescott in the playoff game years ago where he instantly intercepts it. Like those are like type of plays I wouldn't want like a long pass. Like dude, like a guy right up near like the offensive lineman, quick, boom, go. Like that's the only thing I would like do. But yeah, I just don't like the shotgun. That's the only thing of like the shotgun run. Just change it up a little. I don't mind if like it's a first, second down. But like when it's a crucial time, it doesn't work out for them every time I see it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and then one other thing I like to mention for this Packers team before we move on to our preview of the Saints game. I mean, I would compare this team since we're very young. I would compare this team to the 49ers right now, like how they were. You got Josh Jacobs, you got elite running back like CMC, you got the quarterback. I mean, Jordan Love's definitely better than Brock Purdy, in my opinion. They got the receivers. I mean, Jaden Reed, he's your gadget guy like Deebo Samuel. Romeo Dobbs is your reliable guy like Brandon Ayuk. Tight end, you got Tucker Kraft, like he's playing it there. You got a great offensive line. You got Zach Tom playing like a Trent Williams out there. That's something that stands out to me. And then defensively, that has been the big shift I have seen with this team this year with Jeff Hadler, because with Joe Barry, it was shocking that we came in very close to the 49ers and the Cowboys. But with Jeff Hadler, I feel a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, the middle of the field is the big issue with me with Hadler's defense. But you got, like, the pass rush is obviously not like the 49ers pass rush, but it's acting like it this last game here. And there's, like, similarities I keep seeing with this Hadler defense. Like, the scheme-wise, it is like the 49ers defense. It has been like that. And the run defense has gotten significantly better this past couple weeks when, for many years, I can remember as a Packers fan, that has been the main weakness for this team. So that is something I would compare this Packers team to, is a young 49ers team right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go first if you don't mind, Mike, in terms of responding to that. So,
absolutely.
No, I think that's a great comparison to make. I haven't really thought about it in that sense. I mean, obviously, to be honest, I hate the Niners so much that I'm just like, my gut is like, no, they're the Packers version of the Packers. Okay, they're not anything like the, I don't even want to compare it. But no, you're right in terms of structure and like where they have talent on offense and everything, like style of defense. Yeah, very similar field, but there is like a unique aspect to it where like Matt LaFleur, not to compare LaFleur and Shanahan, but it's like, I feel like at this point, at least, like LaFleur is seemingly a little bit more creative and thinks outside the box with his personnel and things like that. So it's nice being on the other side of that, where it was like in 2019, the first, when they met in the playoffs in the NFC Championship game, it just felt like such a mismatch, right? Like it was great to be there in LaFleur's first year, but it also felt like he was probably like on his heels the whole time and like very nervous, and like Shanahan, like, was in his bag basically. But so it's great to feel on that position now, where it's like the Niners are crumbling and the Packers are thriving. And to kind of like harp on what you're saying, like they have all those pieces, but they're all young and relatively cheap too, right? So it's like there's like a 5 to 7 year like runway here. Like obviously anything can happen, but things are looking pretty bright for the general like future of the team as a whole. But yeah, I completely agree with Hafley where it's like not that not that I get super into like nitty gritty of like play design and structures of defense and stuff like that, but it just like feels different. Where the best kind of way I could describe it is that literally about a year ago, I think it might have been the same week that they played the Seahawks this year. Last year, I went to the game against the Giants where they played Tommy DeVito, right? And it was like the narratives going into that game was, hey, like Packers are heating up. They were coming off of the Chiefs win, the Lions win. Like things were trending very much upward. Jordan Love was playing well. The pass rush was getting going. Giants line was terrible. Like all these narratives were like, oh, Packers are going to take care of business. They're going to have 7 sacks. Like Jordan Love's going to light it up. And it turned out to be a slugfest where it's just like a terribly close game and had like a brutal ending, obviously. But anyways, back to Hafley versus Joe Barry. It was like during that game, I was kind of like, a mediocre quarterback like Tom DeVito should not, with the talent that the Packers have on defense, should not be able to do what he wants to do, right? Like he should not be looking like an above average quarterback. And it was like that in like Bryce Young, right? Like that was the thing with Barry. It was like, it was always quarterbacks that you should take care of business against and like honestly embarrassed, to be frank. Like that would never happen. It was always like they would sometimes step up to the moment in the big games, but when they would play the bad teams that have mediocre quarterbacks, they would somehow still be like on the same level as them and like stoop down to their competition. Whereas now it feels like as soon as Sam Howell went to that game against the Seahawks, I was like, there's a 0% chance the Seahawks are coming back in this game. Like I fully trust that the defense is just going to like hound him and like embarrass him. And what they sacked him probably 4 times, had the pick, et cetera. So it was just, I just have this different feeling and like confidence where I'm like, if they're in an advantageous situation, they're going to take care of business. They're not just going to get like, dog walked by a mediocre quarterback or run or whoever it is. Right. Like, so that's why it's kind of like, going up against an elite talent like the Eagles, where it's like if Jalen Hurts is having a good day, like they have Saquon, they have Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, elite offensive line, AJ Brown. It's like they are stacked, right? So it's like that. No matter how good you're playing defense, like even if it was the Eagles defense trying to defend the Eagles offense, like on a good day, that might be a tough matchup, right? So it's like, but against any other team, I'm like, let's bring it all day, every day.
Definitely. Mike, do you want to add up on that or no?
Yeah, I think the gist of comparing them to the 49ers goes to show you how different I think this team is to previous Packers teams. I think the change from 3-4 to 4-3 has made this team more physical on the defensive side.
Yep.
Of course, also getting a guy like Xavier McKinney in there as a safety, which just completely changes the maturity level and kind of the whole narrative of the defense. But I just feel like this team is more physical. Goes into Josh Jacobs too. Like it just feels more of like a complete football team and less of a finesse team. Like I've kind of played the Packers to be kind of throughout Rodgers' tenure. We just always were more finesse than we were ground and pound. And I just feel like the Packers this year are just the opposite. Jordan Love, as much as I think he's played really well this year, I don't think he's winning an MVP anytime soon. But the good thing is I don't think he needs to. I think he needs to be exactly kind of what he's doing right now. And just be a, what do you call it? Like just spread the ball around to all the guys we have on the receiving core. I mean, this receiving core is young, but it's deep, and everyone is stepping up. I mean, there's not one guy in this team that I don't think has stepped up to where we need them to be. Once we kind of get healthier, we get Jair back, Luke Musgrave back. Sure, there's somebody else I'm forgetting, but I think everything is in front of this team. So what I take from you comparing them to the 49ers is this is the team to be reckoned with. I really think if I'm another team, I do not want to play the Packers in the playoffs. I'd almost even prefer to play the Lions based off of kind of some of the injuries they've had.
Yeah.
Although they did give the Bills a run for their money even with all those injuries. So Lions are just really well coached, but the Packers are a well-rounded physical football team, and it's been a while since I've been able to say that.
Yeah, it's really like I know an adage that people have said a lot is like it just feels like they can really only beat themselves right now. It's like I can envision a playoff game against the Eagles, like maybe the Eagles potentially outperform them, but like the Eagles, Lions, or Vikings, and if I just feel like if they were to lose, like it would most likely point back to a series of like critical mistakes or just like dumb things that the Packers did, more so than them just getting like their doors blown off by the opponent, basically. So it's like as long as they keep their shit together, they don't have stupid penalties, like no drop, not egregious drops, like Jordan Smart with the ball, like they can get wherever they want to go, which is incredible. Especially thinking ahead to next year, where it's like I've already started seeing people say like they don't really have any major offensive needs, right? Like you're going to get Jordan Morgan back, like he's essentially a first-round talent on the offensive line, like there's question marks at center, blah blah blah. Like for the most part, they're pretty set on offense and can once again for the first time, the 10th time in the last 10 years, basically allocate most of their draft to the defense, but. They're just, I don't know. It's just I wish most Packers fans would just be calm and enjoy where they're at right now, because they're like very much like up on the trajectory, and it's like, just enjoy the ride. Like, don't think every single game they need to win like 40-0,
Bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing. So actually not so worried about them beating themselves. I agree that right now they can beat anybody, but I don't really get the vibes from this team that's their weakness is beating themselves. I think the vibe. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like I agree with you. They lately, right? Like the last 4 games, they've been pretty mistake free. But we know like from the first half of this year, the first half of last year, like they have that side of them where they can come out and just have a first quarter where you're like, what the hell is happening? They're down by like 13-0 in the blink of an eye, and you're just like, what? Like 3 false starts, a fumble, a bad Love interception. Like I completely agree with you where it's like a similar path as last year, where it's like they continuously got better and better, and then the playoffs were just like on fire, and they look better this year because, as I was saying before, like they had the Lions and the Chiefs games last year, but then they had an ugly Giants and Panthers game on Christmas Eve last year where they barely beat the Panthers. Like yeah, they look much better than they did last year. But it's just like it's more just like knowing that they have those moments in them, and I just hope they don't come out. But I agree with you that they seem in a much better spot, and like they've worked through those things.
Yeah, my concern is the Packers seem to win the games they should, but they seem to lose the games they should too, if that makes sense. So it seems like we're almost like right where we need to be this year.
Yeah,
where like you know what I mean? Like we're not the best team in the conference. I don't think any of us can say that. I think right now you got to have to say it's the Lions. What's giving me hope is that the Lions probably on the way down with some of these injuries. I'm not saying that they're going to completely not be good, but they're definitely not trending up. The Packers in theory are trending up, but the Packers have been done exactly what they should have done. Like the Vikings in the beginning of the season were better than the Packers. They lost them. The Lions the whole season been better than the Packers. We lost both games to the Lions. The Eagles week 1, obviously the Eagles are a good team, and we gave them a run for their money, but we lost, and obviously there was also the Brazil component there. But we've done what we should have done. So my kind of like intuition here is not necessarily that the Packers are going to beat themselves, but maybe we're not as talented as some of the other teams, and we don't beat them because we're just not playing above kind of our talent level. But I think everything is on the table. I don't think that we're going to cakewalk into the Super Bowl. I think there's definitely been easier paths into the Super Bowl than there's been this year. But I think this is the most well-rounded and, I guess, how do I say this, disciplined team that we've had in a long time. And I think it kind of starts with Jeff Hafley is kind of what I'm thinking is the difference. I mean, I think Jeff Hafley has been a really good coordinator so far. I'm not saying this defense has been lights out, but no one's really complaining about the defensive coordinator, which knowing Packers fans, which we all 3 of us in this call know Packers fans really well, that hasn't happened in many years. So I don't really think anybody could complain about Hafley. And don't know. I just think the vibes around this team are a lot different than we're used to the past 15 or so years, where you always kind of feel in the back of your mind that this is a talented team that's going to make it far, but they're going to just fall short.
Or the
I don't
defense
feel
is going
that
to
way.
let them down. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Something's going to let them down.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like we're going to get let down. I feel like either we get beat and you tip your cap to them and say they were just a better team, which honestly, if I had a bet, I'd probably I wouldn't bet that the Packers make the Super Bowl because I think that there's better teams in the NFC. And like I said, I haven't seen them be able to beat those teams just yet. But I also wouldn't bet a ton that they wouldn't make the Super Bowl. I think that is on the table. And that's not something I normally say because I wouldn't say I'm pessimistic. I say I'm realistic. And I think the past few years, the Packers, like, I was hoping that they'd make the Super Bowl last year. I think they probably could have if they would have beat the 49ers, which they should have beat the 49ers. But even in the 49ers game, right, like, they probably had no business making a Super Bowl last year. They almost did, but then blew it in the last minute against the 49ers when they should have beat them. Like they should not have beat the 49ers going into that game. They outplayed them for 3 quarters and then blew it in the 4th quarter, right? That's like the Packers that we know. Like, you're going to get pretty close and then just blow it. So, like, what was the point of getting that close? It was almost like a tease. I'm like
2016 Packers come to mind where they skated to the NFC Championship game against the Falcons and then got obliterated.
Right. I mean, how many times do we get right to the doorstep and then blow ourselves up right on the doorstep? I mean, that is the Packers. I don't get those vibes this year, and I think it starts with the defensive coaching.
Yeah,
I'm not going to give the floor that accolades because he's the same as all those years. So
yeah.
The only thing I can think of is the defensive coaching.
I would say defense and Jordan Love's upside, right? Because same as last year, like he absolutely was a huge part of what gave them this huge ceiling. Is like if he's on a good day where he's hitting on most of his risky throws, like it's going to be great. But if he does some crazy shit and doesn't connect, it's going to be a little stressful. I think when you were saying that, like what I was thinking about was. I completely agree. Like there just feels like a lot. It doesn't feel like I think the 2020, 2021, even 2022 teams, we went into the seasons being like, okay, like the team could be good as they perform throughout the year. It's like, okay, great. Like we should win a Super Bowl, but it was a lot of like older players, free agents. It was a much different like roster mixture, right? Like an older, more expensive roster, obviously, right? So it kind of felt like, yes, they have a chance every year, but it was also like if they don't, it kind of feels like where the 49ers are at now, right? Like towards the end of their build where it was like, if we don't win this year, like shit, like we really got to tear it down and like start over and like it was all for nothing sort of feeling. But this feels very much like a seed, a seed that is like just starting to like sprout and it's gonna like blot. It's just it feels so good. Like they have a shot this year, but like they should absolutely have a shot for the next 5 years as long as they don't do anything. There's not any catastrophic injuries or they don't do anything stupid roster-wise, but I don't see why they would, So it's a very good time to be a Packers fan.
I'll agree.
Definitely.
All right. Want to go into the Saints game, Jeremy?
Yes, we get into the Saints game as it's on a Monday, like Jeff was mentioning of last year, where he had the momentum and we had Tommy DeVito, we had to face him, we lost then. This could end up like the similar situation here, where Packers are favored now by looking at the spread, minus 14 now on the spread. It just went higher, guys. So, and the tickets, the lowest one is $92. So you can go out there if you want to freeze your butt off there. But no, this game, Packers are taking on the Saints in Green Bay. Saints don't got Derek Carr. Alvin Kamara is doubtful for this week, and you got Spencer Rattler starting this week for the Saints. And I remember that guy watching him on Netflix of that high school show, and he is a terrible leader is all I can say if you watch him back from his high school days. Watch 1 minute of his high school tape. Garbage. It is garbage, I can say for that sake. But no, this will be an interesting game here for the Packers. I mean, you gotta keep momentum going is the big thing for me for this Packers game. And that's a big thing. But Spencer Rattler, he's not the guy. He's just not the guy. But what's your guys' thoughts here? Not the guy to me.
No, I mean, obviously don't want to get ahead of myself. And as we both mentioned, this was a very similar situation to last year where it was like things were feeling good. But I just, like Mike was kind of saying, like it feels different this year. Like it just feels like they will take care of business. I think a 14-point spread is a little insane. Like I don't like like I think like 8 or 9 would probably be more appropriate. And it's like if they win by 14, okay, great, that feels great. But like, so that's the only thing is like going into it with a 14-point spread is like, oh shit, okay, so should they win this by like 20 then, or like to feel good about it? So yeah, that's the only weird thing. But otherwise, it's like I feel good. Like 2 days before Christmas, it's at Lambeau. There's snow in the forecast. Like they're gonna have like the Christmas theme in the broadcast. It's 2 days. Like I'm mentally prepared for a great night, but obviously, hopefully not let down.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
I'm going to keep my response short.
Okay.
Which is unlike me. So I think the Packers win.
There we go.
I think they win big.
Okay.
And if they don't win big, that's a concern.
Season's over.
No, the season's not over, but this is a game you need to win. You have the opportunity to clinch the playoffs.
Yep.
More than likely not going to go into the game with the playoffs clinch, which is possible. But what need to happen is the Falcons would need to lose to the Giants, unlikely. And then one of the Seattle Seahawks or Rams, right? Win or lose or tie.
Yep.
Lose or tie. I think if they tie too, it's okay. Yeah, so probably unlikely both those things occur. Likely probably one of the things occur. I would think that Seattle probably loses. They play Vikings, right?
Yeah.
So it's very likely that one of those things occur. Even the Packers lose out for some reason. They're still going to make the playoffs. We should be worried about not making the playoffs. Although, of course, you want to lose out. That would not be good news. But no, this is a game you need to win at home 2 days before Christmas. It's going to be cold. I did not know about the snow in the forecast, although it did snow and they were practicing in it earlier today, I believe.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if you saw, I reposted. Apparently, Eric Wilson was taking a bike to practice in the snow, which is pretty cool. Only in Green Bay. But, no, the Packers need to win this game. I actually was pretty impressed with the Saints the first few weeks. They looked good. They looked like probably the best team in the NFC. But something happened. Something happened after week 3 on where they just completely fell off the wagon. And they're not a good team. As you said, Spencer Rattler's a quarterback. Kamara's not going to play, more than likely. You got to win these games. Yeah. If you can't win this game handily, that's a problem. And good teams in this league win games that they should handily. So, I think the Packers win. I think they win big. And if not, I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think one more funny reminder to last year of the state of the defense compared to this year is like after the Giants game, they played the Bucks, right? And they lost 34-20 in Lambeau, which was brutal.
I was at that game.
Were you?
I was at that game, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to hear that. What I was gonna say is like similar to how I seen somebody post the video of Jordan Love during the Saints game, like doing the split and all that. I saw somebody coincidentally repost a quote from Joe Barry last year after the Bucks game, where everybody was just like, "This defense is terrible. The Packers probably aren't going to make the playoffs, whatever." Joe Barry literally, like in a press conference, was like getting asked about drastically changing the defense and just completely changing their approach, and he had quotes that were along the lines of like, "The worst, like as much as everybody wants this, the worst thing we could do right now is throw out our whole playbook and start from scratch because." Like, we know these concepts will work. They worked in the past, blah, blah, blah. So, like, to have your defensive coordinator last year at this time coming off 2 devastating losses to inferior opponents and talking about the notion of scrapping his whole playbook versus this year is, like, miles ahead. So much better.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because that was a night game against the Giants, obviously a conference game. Similar to the Seahawks. We won this year against the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. Lost to the Giants, which I was actually at that game against the Giants. You said you were at the game.
I was. We were coincidentally at 2 games. Yeah.
But then and then go back home in a big game at Lambeau. Obviously, they lost that one to the Bucks last year. We'll see what happens against the Saints, but similar kind of parallels to last season. And I think we get it done this week. Put the playoffs behind us. Obviously. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it. Sorry.
I was just saying, then what's ahead of us is 1, keeping momentum, 2, seeding. I'm sure seeding is still going to be out there. I haven't done all the research on that, but I think we need to lock in the playoffs this week. And then we got 2 division games coming up.
Yep.
Vikings, Bears. Bears not going to have anything to play for other than ruining our season, although probably there's not going to be much to ruin at that point, just ruin momentum. And the Vikings, of course, will have a decent amount to play for. I'm not sure what their NFC North possibilities are. Definitely better than the Packers. But you would think that they
seat.
Are they?
Yeah, if they win out, because they could also get the number 1 seed too. Like literally, if they win out, they're the most likely to get the number 1 seed, which is crazy.
It is, yeah.
So they're definitely going to be motivated to win.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We could actually end up playing spoiler for them. That could be our motivation.
That's what I was saying. Like, there's no way I don't think the Packers take the Vikings game. Like, they're going to go full throttle that game no matter what.
Although, Vikings being number 1 is probably better than Lions being the number 1 seed, I'll be honest.
At this point, neither scare me, to be honest, but hopefully I don't eat those words. Sam freaking Darnold in the playoffs. Come on now. I understand that oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Oh, Kevin
O'Connell.
God. Yeah, I was about to say McConnell. I don't know. I know Kevin O'Connell's doing an incredible job with that offense, but come on, I can't see Sam Darnold winning more than maybe 1 playoff game in the playoffs. We'll see though.
Definitely. I just don't see it happening either. But to give you guys some injury update report here for this game, Jair was a full participant today. So we'll see if that continues, because last week he was full participant for some days and then he didn't participate at all. So I wouldn't mind if he doesn't play. There's really no issue for me because Chris Olave, he did get off the IR this week, but he's most likely not going to play. So that doesn't really affect us a whole lot. So you got Corey Ballantyne, a limited participant today. Bulwer did not practice. He's dealing with ankle injury. Musgrave, a limited participant, dealing with ankle injury. Quay Walker, he was in a boot, they said, in the locker room today. He did not participate as well. So that's not much. It's week to week is what LaFleur is saying, but given the injury report of what we have seen the past couple weeks, this is actually good for us. We're getting a lot healthier, but the Quay Walker situation definitely hurts us a little bit. Then to head over to the Saints side, Derek Carr is not going to play. Alvin Kamara, unlikely going to play. You got Bub Means, the receiver, dealing with ankle injury, did not participate. MVS, the former Packer, dealing with chest injury, did not practice. Chase Young, the former Commander, dealing with illness, did not participate, and also former 49er, but he was terrible on that team. Juwan Johnson, tight end, dealing with foot injuries, limited participant. Chris Olave, limited participant, dealing with a head injury. Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I thought Packers would maybe go after in the first round or second round, didn't happen because I had him on my radar. He was full participant today. So that is your injury report, guys.
Yeah, I would say I mostly agree with Jair, where obviously be smart, don't risk anything. But I would say the only thing is, like, if he misses this game, I don't know if I would want his first game to be back, like, on the Minnesota turf and also, like, covering Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. You know what I mean? So it's like that might be a brutal first game to come back. So, like, I would just say, if anything, I hope he comes back this game to get some rust off and be prepared for the Vikings game. Or if he misses this week, like, I don't know if he should come back for the Vikings game and have that be his first game back. Like, maybe the Bears game could be like the game to knock the rust off. But either way, that's obviously tremendous that he's coming back. And then, I mean, Quay Walker, like, he's been amazing the last 4 weeks for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, with Cooper back, hopefully he still stays healthy. And Eric Wilson has been solid when he's been in. So, like, McDuffie is more of a concern. Obviously, he's more of a liability, but, like, I think they're fine right now with Cooper and Wilson, at least till the playoffs. Like, hopefully Walker comes back before then, get some rust off and gets back in the swing of things. But even a worst case scenario, if Walker was out for the year, like, I don't know that I feel that much worse about a Edgerrin Cooper and Eric Wilson linebacker core, to be honest with you. But great spot. I think it was, people were mentioning that it was like the shortest injury report of the season, this game, which that's incredible. Like, that's exactly what you want. Hopefully we don't have any New Year's Eve horror surprises like David Bakhtiari randomly or something like that, but it's like, knock on wood, everything's looking good right now.
That's the main thing, right? And I don't think Jair comes back this game. I don't think he honestly comes back before the playoffs, because at this point we want to get healthy for the playoffs. I don't think the Packers really have a ton to gain on the next 3 games. So,
seeing wise,
bring him back maybe.
I Yeah, I agree. Like definitely, like I said, play smart, but it's just like if his first game back was the playoffs, I would then just be concerned. It's like, he missed like 8 straight games at that point. It's like to have his first game back in the playoff, like I don't know.
No,
It's a slippery slope. Like obviously you want to be smart, but it's just like, ooh, I hope he could play one game before the playoffs, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. So why don't we do this because we're coming up at a minute and a half. So an hour and a half. So it's going along. So why don't we do this? So I know we wanted to talk about a few smaller things. One was the Rodgers
documentary.
That's a big thing.
That's
a whole hour.
I still haven't watched that. We're gonna bring it down to 5 minutes. But then I have something myself I want to talk about, which I'll drop at the end. That's nothing crazy. Just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it. But all right. So you want to talk about the documentary again? No spoilers. 5 minutes.
I would like to quickly, before we get into documentary, I would like to talk about the rooting guide here for the Packer fans, for them to see what do we need to root for. I mean, we already mentioned scenarios. The Packers win, they're in. Falcons lose, and either.
Can we do that at the end?
Fine, we could do that at the end.
Right, let's do it at the end. We're going to do that and the predictions. That's how
he was already halfway through it.
I was about done, Mike, but okay.
Because that's a good way to end it. We'll circle right back.
That's fair. You got something intense you're going to drop, huh, Mike? You don't want that to be the last.
Something intense. I just want to get you guys' thoughts on it because it kind of ties. It's not a Packers item. It just ties back into the Packers.
So, all right, you can go first. You want me to go first?
You can go first, yeah.
So, all right, spoiler free. So, it's funny you mentioned that, Mike, because going into it, I was not expecting there to be a lot of Packers, but there is a lot of Packers. Like, it is like very heavily Packers oriented, I would say. There's like a lot of, so going into it, I thought it was more like at first, I didn't even realize it was 3 episodes. I thought it was only 1 episode. And then I also thought it was like 90% like this season and maybe some of yeah, like I thought it was like 90% is recovery, but it's like, it's kind of like the Michael Jordan documentary where it was like, Last Dance, where it was kind of like two timelines where it's like one is like in the present of his recovery, and then the other is like going back to his high school days, and then it goes back to high school, and it's like, so there's a lot of content about his Packers time, which I found very interesting. So it's like going into, honestly, I didn't even really want to watch it. I was just like, whatever, like I have some time, I'll throw it on, I'll see. Like I'm sure there'll be some interesting stuff, or at the very least, I'll just be like, all right, this guy's a crockpot like I thought, or kooky like I thought he was, and just be able to like joke around about it. But no, I honestly highly recommend watching it, especially as a Packers fan. Like he has his moments where you're just like, all right, he's being smug here, there, whatever. Like I know he's obviously a polarizing figure in general nowadays, but there was just a lot more Packer stuff, and he was honestly a lot more. I thought he would be a lot more like defensive about a lot of the narratives. Like he definitely has like that cocky side of him during it. It's like, but it's not. There's a lot of moments where he's honestly like just like humble and kind of like self-aware of his like flaws and limitations and like short temper and just perfectionism and stuff like that. So it was just a lot more honest and raw and like eye-opening from him than I was expecting. Like, again, there's certainly moments where you're like, all right, he's trying to, craft a certain narrative here or whatever. He's like going back to his old bullshit. But for the most part, there was a lot of like nice Packers moments. And there was like Mike McCarthy was in it. Matt LaFleur was in it. Like there's a lot of like former players and coaches that were part of it, that were like part of the interviews that I just had I thought it was literally just going to be like, his inner circle that was just like talking about nonsense for 3 hours, so it was a lot better than I thought it would be. That's what I'll say.
I definitely agree on that. I mean, it was interesting of like the interviews that they had, like Matt LaFleur was one of them, which we discussed before the show, and Mike kind of knows about it, but that was very interesting to hear from that perspective of LaFleur with the whole Rodgers, Jordan Love parts. Mm-hmm. Then the Favre Rodgers interview, that was interesting to see. It was very interesting just to see Rodgers' view of like everything, of like high school, college. I mean, I knew about the high school and college since I watched like similar documentaries about Aaron Rodgers, like on YouTube, about his career and everything. But it was very interesting to how he was like more humble. He was more eye-opening than I've seen him. I think that's kind of aged him a bit. Like when you get the 5 time, you kind of like self-evaluate yourself, like what you've done this entire time, kind of self-reflect yourself is what I would say for Rodgers. And that has been interesting to see of how he humbled. there was a couple things obviously that were annoying. I mean, like even for the football side, like the amount of times I had to see a replay of like the playoff losses, I was just like, I wanted to leave the room. I purposely skipped that scene because I was like, I cannot handle, because it was like every single like moment worse for a Packers fan. I was just like,
but even that, could I just add one thing? So like even that I was surprised by, where I thought they would I literally thought they would take the angle, or like Rodgers would take the angle of like trying to harp on the team not setting him up for success, or like harping on the defense not, or like creating excuses or something for that. But like they literally, like, I'm trying to think how to explain this. Like the way they flashed all those losses and stuff, like it kind of made him look bad in a way, right? Where they were like very honest about like his shortcomings and like that he didn't get back to a Super Bowl. And so it was kind of like, I thought the whole thing would be like a defense of him, and he would be like, oh, like I didn't, like the reason I wanted to go to the Jets was like, I thought there would be like a lot of Packers bashing, and like he would harp on like the reasons he left the team, but it was all like generally positive about the Packers, except for that whole Ted Thompson thing, obviously. But I'll let you continue.
That's the Bucks championship game. That was interesting to hear his thoughts on that. Because that one, like, I knew right out of the gate what Rodgers was thinking, like when they were showing that. I remember going back to Jeopardy when he was hosting, and they had the one contestant literally talk about, or like say, you should have went for it. And all I thought back to that when Rodgers was talking about that, like a little part about the Bucks game, that was the big thing. That was interesting to hear his side, but then Devontae too. So it was interesting to hear from that.
Yeah, they weren't necessarily saying like, I didn't get the impression he was like trying to be tongue in cheek, like he thinks LaFleur messed up. I think he was just like, of course I want a little bit, like I want, like I'm the quarterback, like, and same thing with Devontae, right? It's like, of course I want control. Like I'm never gonna say like I want my coach to kick the ball, right? Like that was kind of the vibe I was getting. I don't think it was like too much tongue in cheek of like that was a bad decision sort of thing, like.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it overall. I mean, I did pay attention to like the ayahuasca stuff.
You did not, is that what you said?
Yeah, I didn't watch the ayahuasca part. I was like, skip.
Gotcha.
I didn't. I was
like
not
you
really,
literally didn't watch it. You just skipped through it.
I literally just like as soon as like they show the scenes, I'm just like I watched 5 minutes and I'm like, this is boring. Okay.
Wait, what?
I was not a fan.
Jeremy doesn't do drugs, all right?
No, that's
the influence. He's the influence.
I wasn't a fan of the ayahuasca, like where they do the whole tree part. That was the thing. I was not like. I wasn't.
So
I
understand it not being relatable, but I feel like it's an important part of the story as well. Like I feel like
all I cared was literally to see was there
how
anything
we talked about the Packers.
Yes, exactly. That's all I cared.
Packers
really.
Only. He's a what do you call it? Very loyal guy.
That's fair.
That's all I cared at the point.
But I mean, I think. I don't know. I think I just resonate with the history aspect, not to like bring up age and stuff, but it's like I vividly remember like living through the whole like summer of Favre retiring and unretired. So like a lot of that just felt like nostalgic almost to kind of like relive that and like just hear him talk about it from his own perspective. So, but yeah, I did watch the ayahuasca parts. I thought, it was obviously a little out there, but it was still entertaining to just hear him. Because the whole like theme of the thing is basically, one final takeaway. One of my biggest takeaways was that he is pretty much straight up acknowledging that he is like deeply depressed as a person, right? And, a perfectionism, right?
That part I watched, yes.
So he's like very much acknowledging like, I don't know if I've ever been truly happy in my entire life, and I'm just striving for it, which I understand is like a human relatable thing. Like everybody could say that to an extent, but it's like he was very open about like the way he carried himself and the way that like former teammates said that he was like short with them or just like short tempered. Like he was very honest about like that was me like not being happy with myself and like struggling with who I am like on the field versus off the field. So like that's why like I want to see the ayahuasca parts, because it kind of feeds into that where he's like, I wanted to seek this like other source of like happiness or whatever. But anyway, it's not for everybody, but
I mean, it was interesting to see like him talk about that after he won the Super Bowl, and he was like, he wasn't that happy. Like he didn't like feel like that, like everyone would feel like when you win a Super Bowl and your team wins it, like you feel so joy. he wasn't that super excited, and he didn't know what to do with his life after.
Right.
He was like,
Right.
and he never was in like the fame stuff. He wasn't a fan of that, the paparazzi. He wasn't a fan of all that. And then they talk about obviously like his brother and his family, that whole.
Yeah, the whole family. It was interesting to learn like
Yeah.
not to spoil it for Mike, but like, yeah, some of the background on the family stuff. But no, I completely agree with the Super Bowl. Like, we could end on that note too, like to move on to the next thing. Cause I know Mike's tapping his wrist over there, but no, I'm just messing with it.
Usually we have to be careful with the guest spot. But...
No, the Super Bowl thing I felt because I think as I get older, I understand that there's just a lot more to life, no matter whether you're a celebrity or a professional sport. Like, literally to hear him sit there and be like, all I ever wanted in life growing up was to win a Super Bowl. And then I won a Super Bowl and I felt like empty. I felt empty afterwards and wasn't happy with that. And so I spent the next 10 years trying to figure out like what in life makes me happy. Like, that is just a universally relatable thing. And it reminds you that like, no matter what your goal in life is, like, you should not allocate all your mental resources to be like, okay, once I hit this goal, I'm going to be happy. It's like, you have to have that continuous like growth mindset and always be curious and move on to the next thing. Because even literally like a pro athlete winning a damn Super Bowl, he described the way he described it too. He was like, after the game, we were sitting in the bus, like all out in the bus after doing media availability at 1 a.m. And I did not feel like, he's like, I didn't feel happy inside. Like, I was sitting on that bus with a Lombardi trophy and I didn't feel happy. And I was just like, holy shit, that's a powerful thing, right?
I'm looking forward to this, actually.
Yeah, it's honestly really good.
The Jets. I thought this was about the Jets.
I completely agree. I literally thought it was about like I thought it was about like the Jets and ayahuasca.
Recovery,
yeah. No, it's like 80% about like his history and just his struggle with like not being happy, basically.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
And I didn't watch it, so let me just give you like an outside perspective of not watching, but what I've seen about Rodgers, right? And I guess we'll go much longer on this one. Hopefully, Jeff isn't,
Oh no, dude!
Your wife's gonna come back like, you're not going on that show ever again, you know?
No, dude, no. She's all in.
I'm just kidding.
She knows it's a huge passion.
I'm just kidding. But look, here's the thing with Rodgers, right? He's one of these guys that is the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah,
I think he knows
like
more
literally,
right.
he literally is most of the time. Yes,
right. And I think that's almost a blessing, but it's also a curse in a lot of ways, because sometimes when you have that type of mind where you could kind of see things before other people see it, and the way he's kind of outlet his kind of upper level. His brain power is football, right? And football obviously requires, it's not something that you can do by yourself. It's a team sport. You got to, obviously he plays the one position that is kind of in the middle of things, but you need so many pieces around you. But you also need to be humble in a lot of ways too, because he's also not the guy making the higher level decisions. On the field, he kind of is, because he's operating it on the field, but the people tasked and whose job it is to make the decisions are the coach, the GM. And we've seen issues with him in Green Bay, in New Jersey, or Green Bay East, as I like to call it, where he likes to try to take other people's jobs and make it his own. Sometimes he's right.
Yeah.
Sometimes, he's not so right. But I think he's always doing something because he's passionate about winning. He's passionate about the guys around him. And then he's truly doing it because that's what he thinks. So you can't fault him for it. I don't think everyone who says that Rodgers is a bad guy, I wholeheartedly disagree. I've always liked Rodgers. But I think he's definitely flawed in a lot of ways, because I think when you have that mindset, that brain power, it almost becomes lonely in a certain ways, because you're kind of thinking of things and you're like, well, this is not the right way to do it, but what do I do now? Because everybody around me, the guys that are in positions of power, are doing something. They're screwing over a guy like Jordy Nelson, right? They're screwing over a guy like James Jones, or David Bakhtiari in theory, or Devontae Adams, right? And you're sitting there as Aaron Rodgers, like, well, now my friend's gone, right? They're not paying my friend, right? And maybe he's just not thinking of it as the larger organization, kind of what the GM is tasked to do. But, he truly believes that that's what's right for the team, for, him, for his friends. And you can't really fault the guy for it. But, in football, time beats nobody. We're kind of seeing that Rodgers himself, right? Like, he's still the smartest guy in the field, but he's definitely not the most athletic. He's definitely not the youngest. And that's kind of a lot of the struggles he's had this year. Although this past game, Devontae Adams went off and he went off, so he looked good this last game. But I guess what I got to say is I think Rodgers has always had a trouble with kind of relating to people in a more professional capacity where things need to get done, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And being able just to kind of give up the reins and say, like, Jesus, take the wheel. Wherever we go, we go. Like, it has to be what he visually thinks is the right move. And I would say, I think a lot of times, 99% of the time, he is right. But I think that also creates a lot of friction. And we've seen it with Mike McCarthy. We've seen it with, what's his name?
LaFleur.
No, LaFleur and him really didn't have a bad situation. The Jets,
Robert Saleh.
Robert Saleh, right? Like, he gets along with certain guys, but then there's some guys he just doesn't get along with. And I think he's just one of those guys where I wouldn't call him a diva. I would just call him a unique person, a unique personality. And it's just not going to be for everybody. And I think that's okay. But I think the reason why he's not 100% happy, and this is just me talking, but I think one of the downsides that from life perspective, right, is I can see Rodgers probably wants a family. I can see he probably wants a wife and stuff. And hasn't been in the cards for a minute. What is he? He's 40, and he's in his early 40s now, right?
Yeah.
So,
Shailene and the Woodley's out there saying that he, ruined her life, basically. No, I'm just
right.
kidding.
But here's the thing. I mean, look, I'm not part of those things. I don't know. But
no, I'm just messing around.
No, because I've heard that too, right? And same thing with Danica Patrick and stuff. Yeah. Like, no one's came out and said, like, look, Rodgers is in a what do you call it? A very public figure, right? Mm-hmm. The narrative was against him quite a bit with the, I'm euthanized or whatever. So
yeah.
I'm what do you call it? Immunized. Sorry, immunized. Right. All this, like, the narrative's been out there for one of these girls that he kind of was with, right? To kind of like say, well, he did all these XYZ to me that was terrible and like really ruined his reputation. But that didn't happen. So, like, what I think is I don't think he truthfully or wanted to ruin the relationships he was in. I think maybe there was just a mental disconnect in those relationships where, like, he was thinking of something in one way.
Yeah.
And these girls just weren't able to kind of meet him where he was at. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably just deteriorated the relationship over time. And I think that probably gets him because I think he wants it. But it just hasn't kind of played out for him, So I think that's probably part of it. Again, I haven't watched the episodes, but it's just what I see from Rodgers. I think he's kind of one of those guys where he's like, what's it like in Shakespeare plays? Can't think of the name. But he's like a hero that's like flawed or something, I can't think of the phrase for it. But he's the best player in the field, but at the same time, he's almost too smart for his own good.
Yeah. No,
I think that's what he's getting at by being honest on it. I'm excited to actually watch this now because I thought it was about the Jets and it had nothing to do with the Packers. That's why when I saw Matt LaFleur, I was like, really? I'm kind of surprised he's even on this. But so it sounds like it's more of a documentary that kind of piggybacks off the book that was written. It sounds like.
Yeah, but potentially. Right. But yeah, it's more about his backstory. I guess he's just got to be on the next season of The Bachelor. But maybe, maybe. Also, he's a complicated fellow is the best way to describe it. That's what Mark Murphy called him, right?
Well, I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. I don't think he's out to get anybody. I think he's just different than everybody.
I think there are a couple incidents that you could point back to and be like, all right, that was either really stupid
or kind of,
he went too far. Like there are definitely times where like the whole immunized thing, like that was shady and weird, and he should have obviously. And that's the whole thing is like he still harps on the vaccination shit, but like nobody cares about it. It's all about the fact that he was like slimy about it, right? And like kind of like maneuvered around saying what he should have said. So, anyways, but he does admit that though, Mike. He does admit.
He does admit it.
He said, yeah.
So
he does.
here's why I don't
He
have an
does.
issue with that. And okay, man, not to get.
We don't. Well, I don't know. I don't think we should. I don't think we should go.
I just want to say real quick. So my thing, a reason why he I don't think that matters, right, is because now he had one set of views. You could agree or disagree with a set of views, right? But he knew that if he said what he was thinking, the NFL would have canceled him and then put him on what do you call it? Wouldn't let him play. So his way was kind of to white lie, to bend the truth a little bit.
But he knew he had to have known it was gonna come back at some point. Like he had to have known he was gonna get like that shit was gonna come out. Like it was gonna come out. There's no way he was gonna be able to just say that and then nobody ever, like, he never gets COVID, never gets questioned. And also in that moment, he was kind of not being truthful with like the media members who are like in proximity to him that could have benefited from knowing his full truth. Is all I'm saying. Like, so that's one of the main things. I'm basically just saying there are probably like a handful of things that he's done that are just straight up like wrong.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Like in the grand scheme of things, I agree with what you're saying, Mike. Like he's not this villain that people cast him out to be. And I think he's just generally like, he's very smug and full of himself at times, which could be a bad thing. But for the most part, it stems from him just being very intelligent and like understanding things on a different level than other people are, not knowing how to like relate. But yeah, over like a lot of the themes that you hit on, Mike, is basically like what the show is about. So yeah, I think you really will enjoy it because he related it back to relationships, like with his family, with his like significant others, about that struggle to like just connect with them, and like it starts with him, not like blaming the other person. So yeah, it's just it was good.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Looking forward to it. All right, and the thing I wanted to hit on, one thing real quick, I wanted to say this is the first time we've seen Rodgers and Devontae Adams really have a lot of success. Outside of a Green Bay uniform. I thought that was the end of the statement. I was like, what? No. I'm just saying that was just an interesting thing that happened this week, right? That was outside of Green Bay. So that was an interesting thing that happened this week. Just want to hit on that. I don't think we need to say much about it. But my point that hopefully this could stay to 5 minutes. I don't think this is as deep as the Rodgers thing, but the Devondre Campbell situation that happened last Thursday in what do you call it? San Francisco. Yeah. I just think it's interesting because Devondre Campbell, of course, had his best season of his career in Green Bay. He was an All-Pro. Kind of came out of nowhere. Then, of course, we brought him back, and he didn't have as great of a season. And he kind of left Green Bay in bad terms too. It just seemed like things changed pretty quick. But of course, to like give up on your team and stuff, and that's just not the way to beat. So I'm just curious what you guys think about that, because I remember on the show, Jeremy, when Devondre Campbell was like in Green Bay and the offseason, we were hoping he got re-signed and stuff. It's just kind of a tragic story to hear about what happened to him, and I think he just needs some. I think he needs some help. I think he needs some therapy help. There's something going on there with him that. Look, you don't like the players. I mean, you don't like the coach. You don't like the GM. That's one thing, right? You can bring up your grievances with the coaches and the GM, but to kind of take your teammates for a ride and not show up to play with them is not the place to be. Definitely selfish. That's where I draw the line. When you take the people that really have no say over your career or your salary or anything, and leave them to hang out to dry, that's not cool. So definitely disappointing from Devondre Campbell. If he came out and like trashed the coaches and the GM after the game, but was there for his players, I wouldn't be talking bad about it. I honestly don't know enough. I have no idea. But to kind of like dress for the game and then be like, yeah, I'm going to play. And then when they need him and he's about to run, say, actually, see ya, and run out. Like that's almost like an Antonio Brown move. Yeah. And at least Antonio Brown did it kind of in a funny way. And Antonio Brown's got his own mental problems where you can't really blame Antonio Brown. Like Devondre Campbell just kind of did it out of spite and out of kind of selfishness, and he doesn't come back to the league after that. There's nobody that's going to sign him.
Yeah, I mean, there was the Vontae Davis situation where the dude retired at halftime and the Bills game. And the Bills so many years ago. That's what reminds me of the Devondre Campbell situation, but. It's kind of glad that we got rid of him, because like you definitely did see him like be very annoyed like in the offseason, like he would go attack the Packers about like you shouldn't have cut me, you should have like kept me and everything. and he goes to San Francisco and he does absolutely nothing. Even when he plays, like he didn't even play great. And when their best star one of their best star players, Dre Greenlaw, who like had that horrific injury, tears ACL on the sideline in the Super Bowl, he comes back, and it's pretty much reasonably understand why you bring back your starter. And Campbell's taking a shot out of like, well, he's taking my spot. I'm like, you took his spot to temporarily play it, but not like take his spot for the future, like whatever. Like you didn't show any signs of like impact the game. You didn't show any signs of like improving yourself, not like dealing with the injury and everything. Cause that was what his big thing was when he was in Green Bay the last season, was he was complaining about the injury. And he didn't get injured this year and he was complaining. Like, I'm glad that we got him from when he was a nobody and we turned to an all-pro. Then after that, it was like, it reminds me of the Zadarius Smith situation where he ended bad terms with us, where like he was happy and he was enjoyed to like watch and be a nice person. Then as soon as he leaves, he's not the person he once was.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with most of what you guys said. So just to keep it relatively short, like I agree with what Mike was saying, where it's like I understand he was a little like, I don't know, fussy towards the end of his time as a Packer, but he never struck me as like somebody that would do something like that. You know what I mean? Like it didn't seem like he was like that off. So like I kind of agree with Mike, where it's like it seems like something's just like not going right with him. Like he's kind of just not mentally well like right now or this year or something, because that does seem kind of out of the blue. I would honestly say like Zadarius Smith's behavior towards the end of his tenure, like, and just the way he carried himself at times, like it would almost be less surprising if like he did something like that in a way, considering like what he did with the Vikings and like he's probably going to do with the Lions. Like, so I don't know. I was kind of, I saw the headline and I was initially like, ooh, good thing, it's like you have that feeling like, ooh, good thing we got rid of him. But then I thought more about it. I was like, I kind of like, that seems like crazy, right? Like there's something not going right there, right? Like it's just not good for anybody. It's not good for the Niners. Like he's never going to play in the league again, probably. Like it's just all, like Mike said, all around, just like not a great situation. You're kind of just like, damn, I hope he's okay, and not just like, and if he is just being selfish, like then cool, like you're a dick, great. But otherwise, like I hope he's okay, not going through some stuff right now.
And it seems like it just seems like he's got some mental issues. It doesn't seem like there's some of the things he'd write on Twitter and stuff. Not that I took it as he was right in some of those ways.
I do remember when he was with the Packers. Like I can't think of examples, but I remember seeing some of the stuff he would occasionally tweet, and I'm just kind of like it just felt like really random and just like out of note, like just very I don't know. I don't obviously I don't want to judge what's going on with them too much, but I just hope he's well. But if he is well, then he's just selfish and emotionally immature, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. All right, let's move on to keys to this week. What Jeremy was talking about before, and then we'll give our predictions and we'll close up.
Yeah. To give you guys the clinching scenarios, as I was halfway through it, we need pretty much a Packers win or a Falcons loss, and either a Seahawks or Rams loss. You need one of them to happen before Monday if you want to have it happen. But for me, you got to have the Packers win, and then to give you rooting guy for the Packers, because there is, like, despite what Mike's saying of you just make the playoffs and all that, there is a bit of seeding issue with the Packers of where this could get terribly bad for the Packers if they lose a game here or there. It could go very bad for the Packers, which to me is if the Commanders win, for example, we'll go Commanders beat the Eagles week and the Packers somehow lose to the Saints. We'll just say the Packers will be the 7th seed, and you have to go face the Philadelphia Eagles the first round. That is something I do not want to happen in the first round. I want a tough opponent, but not the toughest opponent the first round. Like it's like a do or die situation with the Packers in that scenario. But the games that I would root for the Packers to have a somewhat easier shot of an easier opponent is I would root for the Bears or the Lions, just because the Lions. I'm not a fan of them, but Bears, just also for the Bears to get not the highest draft pick just to annoy themselves. Eagles with the Commanders, because I just mentioned it. Jets over the Rams, because I'd rather not face the Rams the first round. even though they had like that low score game last week, last time we played the Rams, we didn't face Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. So that is something that's interesting to me. Then I would like the Seahawks over the Vikings, because in order for the Packers to get the 5 seed, they pretty much need the Packers to Packers need to win out, which includes the Vikings losing to the Packers. And because of the tiebreaker, because if the case goes the Packers beat the Vikings, it'd be a divisional record, and it'd be like 1-1 the tie split, the Lions would have to beat the Vikings for the Packers to pass them. And for the Seahawks wise, I would just like to play them the first round again. I would just like to play them the first round. And then the Cowboys over the Bucks is another thing, just because Bucks, I don't mind them. Defensively, they are not that scared to me. Offensively, I don't know where you're going to see out Baker Mayfield's hands, because he is very hot right now, and that could really hurt us if we have to play him the first round. But that's my reading guy, guys.
Yeah, I think I'm just kind of like, I generally agree with most of what you said, but I'm kind of just like bringing on whoever, however it shakes out, like bring him on. I think they got a good chance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's like I was saying before, I think it's just a great time to be a Packers fan, but both this year and the path ahead for the next 3 to 5 years. So do we say game? Are we doing game predictions now or after reaction to this?
But do you have anything last to comment on?
All I have to say is win.
Okay.
I'm usually the what do you call it, situation guy or the scenario guy towards this part of the season.
He is.
I'm not as.
I was looking back on your earlier today. I was just scrolling through like some of the older stuff that you guys had, like on your page and like your individuals, and I saw you used to do like some chart, like the visuals, like the playoff, like visualizations. Yeah, you gotta get that in gotta get that in like a Tableau dashboard or something. Yeah,
I know. I could create it again. But yeah, I used to do it in Excel, and I made it to like the top of the Packers Reddit at one point. I haven't done that in a long time. Should try to get it. It was a good amount of work, but it wasn't that bad.
That's what I do. I do analytics and like data visualization. Like that's my profession basically. So
take it over from me. But no, that's it. What I was like one of the first people to find like the New York Times playoff predictor when they first came out like a few years ago on like YouTube, and like that was the thing. But then like everyone started using it, and it was like it's not. Like I'm not really adding much value because everyone's using it now. So I kind of stopped.
It seemed like you pulled the data from it. I was impressed with your project when I saw it. It was a good effort. But yeah, once everybody starts doing it, it becomes less interesting.
It became less interesting. So the other thing was it wasn't behind a paywall as much as it was now. So I think that year I actually paid for it because that added to like the fact that no one could get into it because of the paywall. So I don't know. I definitely did it back then. I was gonna try to keep with it.
You publish their data illegally, is what you're saying.
No, I mean, I put it in my own. What do you call it?
I'm just messing. Just the way you phrased that was basically a polite way to say that you.
No, I put my own format. I didn't do anything illegal. But yeah, now everyone has that information, so it's less interesting. But no, I think this season we're not going to win the division. That's the sad part about it. We're not going to get a home playoff game. That's really what I care about more at this point. Like, is it possible to get a home playoff game? Is it possible to get the NFC Championship game in Lambeau? Because again, I want to do that. So a lot of that is me selfish. A lot of it is because it's just easier to expect the Packers to make the Super Bowl going through home, right? So it's not all selfish. But and if there's one thing to be selfish for, I think having a home playoff game in Lambeau is a pretty good thing that everyone can get on the same page for. So I wouldn't really call it selfish. But that's why I care so much about that. Is like I want the opportunity to have that game. I realized really early this season that even if we made the playoffs, that wasn't on the table. So I don't really care that much. I think we probably don't get the 7th seed. I don't think that's going to happen. So it's a 5th or 6th seed. So what does that mean? That means we are playing either the winner of the West or the winner of the South.
Yep.
So that's why I'm not so concerned. I think both. Look, we beat all of the West. We beat. Well, I guess we're playing the Saints, right? So that's the only South team that we played. So we'll see if we beat the Saints, but we could beat either of those teams. So I don't think the Packers are a one and done team. That's why I'm not so concerned about the seeding. But obviously, I'd rather the 5th seed than the 6th seed, and of course, I'd rather the 5th or 6th more than the 7th. But I'm not going to kill myself looking at all these scenarios when more than likely or not we're going to get the 5th or 6th seed.
Yeah, I'm just gonna enjoy it's like that time of the year where like you realize like, oh shit, most of the season's gone. There's only 3 games. That's why like fans are like I saw a couple weeks ago being like on some podcast saying like, I don't know, like the rest of the season is going to be kind of chalk and boring. And it's like your team is winning most of their games, and like just seeing them perform well is exciting. I don't know. I just don't like when fans take it for granted, like each individual game. Like you don't want to just simulate to the end of the season and be like, all right, did they make the Super Bowl or not? Right? Like that's not. I don't know. It's the journey. So I
agree.
Even though there's not much at stake still, like I'm just going to enjoy each game remaining. Like got the Christmas-ish game coming up. Vikings will be a blast. Bears, you always want to beat them at Lambeau, so feeling very good about it.
The way I feel is this is just the beginning, and I know the season's almost over, but I feel like we're just getting started.
Yeah, it feels very reminiscent of like 2010, 2011, where it's kind of like, all right, they have a nice, obviously, that didn't pan out with them as many Super Bowls as we would have hoped, but it's that similar feeling where it's like this is the start of something big, basically,
Right, and I think you're thinking about multiple seasons down the line. I'm thinking about this season.
Oh, gotcha.
I thought
you were saying
this is the start of
a run
here.
Run.
I think this is a run here.
Yeah.
I don't know if they make the playoffs. I don't know if they make the Super Bowl. Never making the playoffs. I don't know if they make the Super Bowl. I think the Super Bowl is on the table. I don't think I'd bet on it, but I think the championship game is on the table, and I think a week 1 win is almost guaranteed. I mean, I have to knock on wood. I don't want to.
Don't throw the G word there. Come on.
But
Charles Barkley.
It would be a massive disappointment, I think, if they don't win in the first week. So to get a playoff win, to be that solid about a playoff win at this point
is incredible.
Is incredible, and it's really exciting. And I think they could beat any one of these teams. It's a tough slate with mostly NFC North teams, so teams that you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very unique in that aspect. But Packers could beat any one of these teams. It's just who do we get that day? Do we get a team that's going to outperform, or do we going to get a team that's just going to kind of play at their level?
Yep,
that's the question.
Definitely.
Yeah, completely agree.
All right, you want to give predictions for the game and wrap it up?
Yeah. I'll start first. I think Packers win it here. I will go 30 because I think they can get 30 points, and I'll make it not the 14-point spread. I will go 21 just to make it
21. Easy. You think Rattler and third string running back and wide receiver are going to put 21 points?
I think it'll be a garbage. I think they'll have 14 of the points, and then somehow they'll get a garbage time touchdown at the end. That's how I think it'll be. And then they'll try the onside kick, and then we'll get the onside kick. So I think there's gonna be a garbage time tutty for the Saints. I can say that.
Gotcha. I feel like it's gonna be a much more open. I'm going 31-10. I think the Packers are gonna cruise. I don't see how the Saints score 2 touchdowns, to be honest with you. But we'll see. Especially with Kamara out, MVS questionable.
Yes.
Rattler or Hainer, like neither of them intimidate me at all. Like I know they played the Commanders hard last week, but the Commanders are also kind of falling off themselves a little bit. So yeah, I'm going 31-10. I think they know what's at stake. They want to punch their ticket to the playoffs, and they get shit done.
I'm going to say 28-13.
Close to my spread. 15. You're going one point over the spread, right?
That's right. My lucky number, 15.
All right, guys.
All right. So the way we ended is where can you find us? Jeff, we'll let you start off. Where can the viewers find you, and then where do you want to leave them off?
I forgot the thing to do on these types of like podcasts is to put your handle on there instead of just my first name, like it's a work.
My name's Jeff. My name's Jeff. You missed an opportunity for my name's Jeff.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I'm J Macman on Twitter, MACMANN, or Twitter, but also Blue Sky as well. I'm not super active, to be honest. I think I like these types of things more, just kind of like meeting people, doing podcasts, things like that. So don't post a ton, but I certainly enjoy anybody who's creating Packers content, podcasts, just entertaining tweets, whatever. So yeah, just great season. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to come back anytime you guys want.
course.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks.
it.
I'll go in the Jeremy close. Jeremy has the most going on here. He's doing the most work. Yeah, first of all, thanks for coming on, Jeff. It's been great having you on. It was, again, great meeting you in Green Bay. Yeah, we can find me. I'm on X, obviously on the podcast page, PackReacts Pod, my personal page, Arvo15. Other than that, getting through work, getting through things. I have been pretty quiet on the Packers blogosphere. So I got to get back going. Hopefully with the playoff run coming up, we can kind of dig our feet in and get some things going. So definitely have to be more, what do you call it? Active and consistent with the podcast. Otherwise, Jeremy's going to kick me off. So that's my New Year's resolution. Sorry to the viewers. But although we have our longest episode right now, almost coming in at 2 hours and 15 minutes. So any of the
longest
viewers
ever?
Who stayed here, I don't think we've ever gotten this long. So
wow, nice. I don't know if that's good or I don't know if that's a good or a bad.
No, I think it was good. I think it was a good episode. I think that's a good episode. But definitely a new record for the podcast. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, again, thank you, Jeff, for coming on. Appreciate it. Getting to hear about your Packers story, and anytime you want to come on, you're always welcome to come on. Where you can find me, I'll start with the PackReacts side. Of course, you can find on my YouTube channel, Jeremy Hadler. You can find me on PackReacts Twitter. You can find this episode, which I have to get back on with Spotify, because you can listen to if you don't want to listen to us live, you can always listen on your own free time on Spotify. PackReacts, you can look that up yourself. It's on there just to listen to us and me and Mike. I have been lacking of uploading some episodes. I've been a little bit busy because I'm working on some YouTube projects, going back to the GOAT series right now, which I got to work on the AFC side, and then hopefully get my Packers playoff hype trailer video at the end of the regular season. I'll be working on that. So that's the big things for my YouTube channel where you find me.
Jeremy's killing it. Jeff, you gotta look at he has like a GOAT series.
I saw. I was going through some of that stuff.
Jeremy's great. Jeremy's going to be a big time player in the industry.
Production,
yeah. But I got to get through my job. This is a good thing to talk. But I keep saying I'm going to do some kind of a project or something. I never do it. I probably won't ever. But Jeremy's your guy.
Hey, this is my first endeavor in the content too.
There you go. Well, hopefully we get you on. But all right, well, I'll take us off. So again, thanks, Jeff, for coming on. This is a great episode. Again, broke a record here, 2 hours and 16 minutes. So if there's any of the viewers that stayed here for the whole 136 minutes and counting, thank you. Definitely reach out to us.
Can you see if anybody watching?
On Twitter, we have 29 viewers, but that's throughout the whole time. It doesn't.
Gotcha.
YouTubers, yeah.
Nice.
Twitter used to fluctuate when people would come in and come out. It would show you. Now it just shows you what do you call it? A
total
for the whole time. Yeah,
viewers.
Exactly. So we definitely have viewers, but I doubt anybody stayed the whole time. But no, that's the fun part of this is really for yourself and things to look back on. So yeah. So. All right. Thank you all for watching. Thanks again, Jeff, for coming on. Jeremy, another great show. And let's all Monday Night Football, Packers Saints, 2 days before Christmas. Everyone have a happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah,
Happy Kwanzaa.
Whatever holiday you guys celebrate.
Happy Packers holiday.
Right. We really appreciate you for joining the show. Appreciate you for being a Packers fan or NFL fan, whatever reason you're watching. And thank you. Yeah. So again, the way we ended off, Jeff, just so you know, is we used to sing, but now we don't do it anymore. We just say go Pack go. So on 3, we'll say it. All right. 3, 2, 1. Go Pack go.